The asteroid came out of nowhere. Captain Zarin watched the navigation display flicker and die.
We have to
as the
evacuate
luminous tide
now,
shuddered
but the
beneath
mission
his feet.
is over.
The impact
Staying is
sounded like
suicide.
bones
All right,
breaking.
I'm with you.
Metal screamed. Somewhere deep in the ship's belly, systems that had hummed with life for 15 years fell silent one by one.
Reroute auxiliary power to
Each death
shields
marked by
now.
alarms
Containment
that
is
blared
failing. We
and
have to
then faded
stabilize.
into ominous
Burning now. Hold
quiet.
steady.
He gripped the edge of
Life
his
support
command
critical at
console
14%.
as the deck tilted 15
It's
degrees
drop
to
bang
port.
fast. We have to
Around
reroute power
him,
now.
the bridge crew fought to stay upright. Navigator Maris called out damage reports in a voice that tried to stay calm, but couldn't quite manage it. The young officer's webbed fingers danced across controls that no longer responded, trying to coax life from systems that had already surrendered to death. Through the forward viewport, Zarin could see the asteroid field stretching endlessly into the dark. Chunks of ancient rock tumbled through space like the bones of dead worlds, their surfaces scarred by eons of collisions. They had appeared on sensors only seconds before impact. Not enough time to turn, not enough time to maneuver, not enough time to do anything but brace for the inevitable. The luminous tide had been his home for 5 years. A research vessel dedicated to peaceful exploration, mapping uncharted systems, cataloging new phenomena, seeking out planets that might someday join the great community of the Galactic Council. Before that, he'd served aboard the Morning Current under Captain Vel, his mentor, his friend the Aquari, who had taught him everything about leadership and exploration and seeing beauty in the endless dark between worlds. Captain Vel had died out here. 10 years ago in a different asteroid field under a different sun. His ship had suffered catastrophic damage just like this. He had called for help, transmitted his position, requested immediate rescue. The Galactic Council had received the transmission. They had acknowledged it. Then they had debated, formed committees, discussed protocols and jurisdictions and proper procedures. By the time they finally authorized rescue ships to depart, there was nothing left to save but frozen corpses and shattered dreams. Zarin had sworn then, standing at his mentor's memorial service, that he would never let bureaucracy kill his crew. He would make the hard choices, the fast choices, the choices that saved lives instead of following procedures that valued paperwork over people. Now he stood on a dying ship and wondered if there were any choices left to make at all. Life support is failing, Captain. Dr. Lyra's voice cut through his memories like a blade. The medical officer looked up from her station, her large dark eyes reflecting the warning lights that painted the bridge in shades of red and amber. She was trying to stay professional, trying to keep the fear out of her voice, but Zarin had known her for 3 years. He could hear the terror underneath. Primary systems are offline, secondary systems compromised. We're venting atmosphere through hull breaches on decks 3 and 5. Sealing protocols are failing. Zarin's chest tightened. The question had to be asked, even though he dreaded the answer. How long? 6 hours. She paused, and in that pause he heard everything she wasn't saying. The calculations, the prayers, the desperate hope that somehow they were wrong. Maybe less if we can't seal the breaches. Maybe more if we shut down non-essential systems and reduce crew activity to minimum. But 6 hours is the best estimate. 6 hours, 360 minutes, 21,600 seconds. The words hung in the recycled air like a death sentence written in fire. He looked across the bridge at the crew that trusted him. Maris, barely 28 years old, who still believed the galaxy was a place of wonder and discovery. Communications Officer Rel, who had a mate, and 2 younglings waiting back home on Aquar Prime, who carried holographic images of them everywhere and looked at them when she thought no one was watching. Chief Engineer Talus, whose hands could coax life from dying machines, but couldn't work miracles when the machines were too far gone to save. And Dr. Lyra, whose 8-year-old daughter, Kiva, was aboard this ship. They had brought 5 younglings on this mission. Children who wanted to see the stars, to learn what lay beyond their water world, to touch the infinite. It was an Aquari tradition stretching back centuries. The young should grow up knowing the universe was vast and beautiful and safe. They should see other worlds, meet other species. Understand that the cosmos was filled with wonders waiting to be discovered. Zarin had believed that too. Once. Before Captain Vel died, waiting for help that came too late. Sir? Maris's voice pulled him back from the edge of despair. I'm scanning for rescue possibilities. There have to be ships within range. Stations. Outposts. Someone who can reach us in time. Do it. Zarin moved to the communication station, his legs feeling heavy like he was walking through deep water. Send emergency broadcasts on all council frequencies. Standard distress protocols. Let everyone know we're here and we need help. The next few minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by the hiss of escaping air somewhere in the ship's damaged hull and the steady beep of the scanner as it searched the surrounding star systems for hope. Zarin watched the display, watched the search pattern expand outward in concentric circles, watched the empty returns come back one after another. Nothing, nothing, nothing. He closed his eyes and thought of Captain Vell. The old equerry had died waiting for help that came too late, suffocating slowly as his air ran out, knowing that rescue ships were coming, but would arrive to find only corpses. Would the same thing happen here? Would some future captain stand on his own dying bridge and remember Zarin, the same way Zarin remembered Vell? He wouldn't let that happen. He couldn't. Whatever it took. Whatever the cost. Whatever rules he had to break. Captain? Maris's voice had changed. The young navigator sounded confused, frightened, like he'd discovered something that didn't make sense, something that violated everything he thought he knew about the universe. I found something. Zarin opened his eyes. Rescue ships. A civilization, advanced technology, faster than light capability confirmed. Medical infrastructure detected. They could reach us in time. Maris looked up from his console and Zarin saw something in his expression that made his blood run cold. Ice water in his veins. But there's a problem, sir. What kind of problem? Maris touched his screen with trembling fingers. The main display flickered to life, showing a star map with a single blinking marker. Next to it, text appeared in the flowing script of the Equerry language, and as Zarin read the words, he felt the deck drop out from under him. The bridge went quiet. Even the damaged systems seemed to hold their breath. Every Equerry on the bridge stared at the display like it was showing them their worst nightmare made manifest. Zarin had heard of Deathworlds. Every species in the Council had. They were the nightmare places, the planets where evolution had gone terribly, catastrophically wrong. Worlds so harsh, so violent, so utterly hostile to life that the creatures that emerged from them were twisted into something terrible. Apex predators, born killers. Species that knew only war and blood and conquest and had somehow developed technology despite, or perhaps because of their savage nature. The Council had strict protocols about Deathworlds. Survey them from a safe distance, mark them as restricted, document their danger, and never under any circumstances make contact with the things that live there, because Deathworlders couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be trusted, couldn't be anything but what evolution had made them, monsters wearing the mask of civilization. There must be other options, Zarin said. His voice sounded hollow even to himself, like he was speaking from the bottom of a deep well. Keep scanning, expand the search radius. There has to be someone else. Maris's fingers moved across the controls with increasing desperation. The star map expanded, showing dozens of nearby systems in every direction. Red markers appeared, each one representing a potential rescue source. As Zarin watched, the computer analyzed each one with ruthless efficiency. Distance, technology level, medical capability, estimated response time. One by one they turned gray. Eliminated, impossible, too far. The list went on and on. Every possibility, every hope eliminated by simple mathematics and cold physics. They were too far from civilized space, too far from the trade routes and the council stations and the safe, peaceful worlds where help could be found. Only one marker remained green on the display. Pulsing, insistent, possible. Zarin stared at the words. 4.5 hours, less than their remaining life support by a comfortable margin. Close enough to save them all. Advanced medical capabilities that could treat their injuries. Ships fast enough to reach them before the last of their air ran out. If the monsters that lived there chose to help instead of hunt. If they saw the Equerry as victims to be rescued instead of prey to be taken. If they possessed even a shred of mercy beneath their predatory instincts. It was a gamble with 43 lives as the stakes. Access the full database entry, he said quietly. I want to know everything the Council has on these humans. Maris hesitated, his hand hovering over the controls. Sir, are you certain the classification alone should tell us? I need to know what we're dealing with. Access the file. The young navigator complied, though his reluctance showed in every movement. The screen filled with text and images. Zarin read it with growing dread, each line adding another layer to his fear. There was more. Pages and pages of analysis. Biological data showing humans were built for violence from the cellular level up. Comparative studies showing their predatory adaptations exceeded those of almost every other known species. Psychological profiles suggesting they were naturally aggressive, territorially defensive, and prone to solving problems through force. The report detailed their history in clinical terms that somehow made it worse. Endless wars. Conflicts that lasted generations. Weapons of such horrific efficiency that they had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. A species that had discovered how to split the atom and had immediately weaponized it. That had reached for the stars while still fighting among themselves over scraps of territory and resources and ancient grudges. The Council had marked Earth as forbidden 73 years ago when human ships had first appeared beyond their own star system. Long-range sensors had detected their vessels' warships, every one of them bristling with weapons, and the Council had made a decision. These creatures were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too fundamentally violent to be allowed into the galactic community. Since then, there had been no contact, no communication, no exchange of any kind, just a standing order to all Council vessels: stay away from human space. They are dangerous. They are unpredictable. They cannot be trusted with anything, least of all contact with peaceful species. Zarin looked at the data and felt his hope crumble into dust and blow away on solar winds. "Sir," Dr. Lyra's voice was soft but urgent. She was trying to stay calm for the crew, trying to maintain the professional demeanor expected of a senior officer, but her hands were shaking. "The younglings are having trouble breathing. The air is getting too thin for their developing respiratory systems." He turned to see 5 small Aquari children huddled in the corner of the bridge. They had been so excited when the mission began, chattering about all the wonders they would see, all the new things they would learn. Now they sat quietly, their small chests heaving with effort, their gills fluttering rapidly as they struggled to pull oxygen from the failing atmosphere. Kiva, Dr. Lyra's daughter, sat among them, 8 years old, bright and curious and full of questions about everything. She had asked Zarin just yesterday what it felt like to be a captain, to be responsible for so many lives, to make the decisions that kept everyone safe. He had told her it was an honor, a privilege, the greatest responsibility anyone could have. Now he looked at her pale face and labored breathing and wondered if he had lied to her. Zarin had promised their parents he would keep them safe. He had promised them adventure and wonder and a gentle introduction to the cosmos. He had promised them they would see beautiful things and learn important lessons and return home with stories to tell for the rest of their lives. Instead, he had led them to their deaths, unless... He looked back at the screen, at the green marker representing Earth, at the words estimated travel time 4.5 hours. "Captain." Maris stood from his station. The young navigator's face was set in hard lines, his jaw clenched with conviction. "You can't be considering this. The database is absolutely clear. Humans are apex predators. They evolved through constant warfare. Their entire civilization is built on violence. If we send that signal, we were not calling for rescue. We're announcing ourselves as prey. We're inviting death." "We're dying anyway," Zarin said quietly. "At least we'll die with honor, not as victims of Deathworlders, not as another entry in their history of conquest and predation," Zarin wanted to argue. He wanted to tell Maris that there had to be another way, that surely in all the vast galaxy there was someone else who could help them. But he looked at Kiva's struggling form, saw the other younglings growing weaker by the minute, and knew there wasn't. He had watched Captain Vel die, waiting for the Council to save him. He had stood at the memorial service and promised himself he would never make the same mistake. He would never let procedure and protocol and fear kill his crew when action could save them. This was that moment. The hard choice, the fast choice, the choice that might save lives or might doom them all, but at least it was a choice instead of passive acceptance of death. "Bring up the emergency distress protocol," Zarin ordered. "Sir." "That's an order, Navigator." Maris's jaw clenched even tighter, but he returned to his station. His fingers moved across the controls with visible reluctance, each keystroke an act of protest. The communication system came online damaged but functional enough for what they needed. The distress beacon was designed for exactly this situation, to reach out across the stars when all other options had failed. "Distress beacon is ready," Maris said. His voice had gone flat. Dead, like he was already mourning them all. "Targeting Earth. This is a direct violation of Council Protocol Article 7, Section 12, Subsection 41. Contact with forbidden species. We'll be court-martialed if we survive this." If we survive," Zarin said, meeting his navigator's eyes, "I'll face whatever punishment they want to give me. But I'd rather face a court-martial than explain to those children's families why I let them die when there was a chance, even a dangerous chance, to save them." He moved to the communication station and began composing the message. His hands shook as he typed, fingers slipping on the controls. Every word felt like a gamble. Every sentence could be the one that determined whether they lived or died. How did you ask monsters for mercy? How did you convince predators not to hunt? How did you appeal to something that might not even understand the concept of compassion? He decided on honesty. Simple, direct, desperate. The truth because he had nothing else to offer. He read it over 3 times, changed nothing, couldn't change anything. It was a plea from the dying to the dangerous. A prayer sent into the dark with no guarantee of answer, only the terrible hope that something out there might hear and might care. Broadcast it, he said. Maris pressed the transmission key with the finality of a man closing a coffin. The message converted to faster-than-light format and shot out into the void, moving at speeds that defied physics, carrying their desperate plea across light years in the span of minutes. It would reach Earth quickly. After that, either help would come or it wouldn't. Either the humans would prove to be the monsters the Council feared, or they wouldn't. Either way, they would know soon enough. The bridge fell into silence again, the kind of silence that comes before executions. The crew watched their monitors with the intensity of people watching their own doom approach. Checked the life support readings as they continued their steady, inexorable decline. 38%, 35%, 32%. Each drop another nail in their coffin. Zarin moved to where the youngling sat. He knelt beside Kiva and placed a webbed hand on her small shoulder. She looked up at him with eyes too large and too frightened for a child her age. Eyes that should have been filled with wonder at the universe, not terror at her own mortality. "Are we going to die, Captain?" she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, raspy from the thin air. He wanted to lie, wanted to tell her everything would be fine, that help was coming, that she would see her home again and play in the warm seas of Aquar Prime and grow up to have adventures of her own. But Captain Vel had taught him something important. Had made him promise years ago that whatever else he did, he would always give people, especially the young, the dignity of honesty. "I don't know," he said. His voice was gentle but truthful. "But I promise you this. I will do everything I can to keep you safe. Everything. There's a ship coming, people who might be able to help us. I don't know if they will, but I had to try. Do you understand?" She nodded slowly, trying to be brave. Failing. She was 8 years old and struggling to breathe on a dying ship millions of miles from home. Are they the bad people, the ones we're not supposed to talk to? I don't know if they're bad, Kiva. The Council says they are, but sometimes," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes the galaxy is more complicated than we're taught. Sometimes we have to see things with our own eyes before we can know the truth." Dr. Lyra knelt beside them. She wrapped her arms around her daughter and looked at Zarin with eyes that held more fear than he had ever seen in another living being. Not fear for herself, fear for her child, the kind of primal, overwhelming terror that comes from watching your offspring slip away and being powerless to stop it. "Did you really call Earth?" she asked quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "The Deathworlders." "I did." "Will they come?" Zarin didn't have an answer to give her. He didn't know. How could anyone know what monsters would do? Time passed with agonizing slowness, the kind of slow that made every second feel like an hour, every minute like a day. The life support continued to fail with mechanical precision. 28%, 24%, 20%. The air grew thinner and thinner until every breath felt like trying to breathe through wet cloth. Some of the crew had fallen unconscious. Chief Engineer Tallis slumped at his station, his chest rising and falling in shallow gasps that came further and further apart. Communications Officer Rel had stopped responding to hails, her head down on her console, her hands still reaching for controls she could no longer operate. Kiva's breathing had become a wet, labored rasp that tore at Zarin's hearts. The other younglings weren't much better. Their small bodies simply couldn't handle the oxygen deprivation. They were dying faster than the adults, their developing systems shutting down one by one. Zarin sat in his command chair and thought about Captain Vel, about all the promises he had made to his mentor's memory, about all the ways he had tried to honor that promise, about all the ways he was failing now. Then the communication system crackled to life. The sound was so unexpected, so impossibly sudden, that Zarin jerked upright in his chair. Around him, the conscious crew members looked up with desperate hope in their eyes. The kind of hope that comes from dying people who suddenly see a chance, any chance to live. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything Zarin had ever heard. Deep, rough. It carried an edge that made the automatic translator work hard to convert it to a query, processing each word through layers of linguistic analysis. It was the voice of something large and powerful and utterly alien. A predator's voice, a hunter's voice. But it was also calm, professional, almost gentle in its certainty. "Luminous Tide, this is Admiral Thane of Terran Defense Command." Terran, the human word for themselves. Earthborn, Children of that death world. Defense command, military, warriors. Exactly what the database had warned them about. Zaren's flickering hope began to die again, crushed under the weight of his own fear. But the voice continued, and something in its tone made him pause, made him listen instead of surrendering to despair. We have received your distress call. We are dispatching our nearest ship immediately to your location. Medical teams are being prepared as we speak. Engineering support is standing by. Rescue personnel are running final equipment checks. A pause. In that pause, Zaren could hear other voices in the background. Humans talking in their harsh, clipped language, giving orders, moving with purpose and efficiency. The sounds of organized activity, of people who knew exactly what they were doing. Captain Zaren, Admiral Thane said, and the way he pronounced Zaren's name carefully, respectfully, like it mattered, like he had taken the time to learn the proper pronunciation, made something tight in Zaren's chest loosen just slightly. You and your crew are going to be all right. Help is on the way. Our best ship, our best people. Just hold on a little longer. Can you do that for me? The transmission ended with a soft click. The bridge erupted in weak cheers. Relief washed over the crew like a wave. Joy. Hope. The faint, desperate possibility that maybe, just maybe, they would see another sunrise after all. But Zaren couldn't share their optimism. He stared at the communication console and replayed the message in his mind, analyzing every word, every nuance, every subtle shade of meaning. Defense command, military. The humans had sent their warriors. Of course they had. What else would a species of predators send to answer a distress call? What else could they send when their entire civilization was built on warfare and violence? Sir, Maris had pulled himself back to his station with visible effort. I'm receiving ship data. They're transmitting their approach vector and estimated arrival time. Show me. The main display updated. A new marker appeared on the star map, moving toward them with impossible speed. The velocity readings made no sense. No council ship could move that fast. No peaceful exploration vessels could eat up distance like that. Only a warship could, 2.5 kilometers. The luminous tide was barely 300 meters from bow to stern. Whatever was coming for them was more than 8 times their size. A leviathan, a monster made of metal and violence. A ship built for war, coming to rescue them, or to claim them. Time would tell which. Captain, Dr. Lyra said softly, her voice carrying across the silent bridge. She was still holding Kiva, her arms wrapped protectively around her daughter. What have we done? Zaren didn't answer. Couldn't answer. He watched the marker on the display move closer and closer, eating up the light years between Earth and their dying ship, and wondered the same thing. They had called for help from Deathworlders. Now that help was coming. Whether it was rescue or doom remained to be seen. The next 4 hours were the longest of Zaren's life. Each minute stretched like taffy, each second an eternity of waiting and wondering and fearing. The crew did what they could with their failing ship. They sealed what hull breaches they could reach, though many were in sections too damaged to access safely. They rerouted power to life support, cannibalizing every non-essential system to buy themselves a few more precious minutes of air. They rationed the remaining oxygen and tried to keep the younglings comfortable, though comfortable was a relative term when you were suffocating slowly on a dead ship. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. The life support systems continued their relentless decline. 18%, 15%, 12%. Each drop was another step closer to the edge, another moment closer to the point where their bodies would simply shut down from lack of oxygen. By the time the proximity alarms chimed a sound almost too quiet to hear, over the dying ship's groans, half the crew was unconscious. The younglings had stopped moving entirely, their small chests rising and falling in barely perceptible rhythms. Only the medical scanner confirmed they were still alive, still clinging to life by threads that were fraying with each passing moment. Zaren forced himself to his feet, using the command console for support. His vision swam. His limbs felt like they were made of lead, but he had to see this, had to witness what was coming for them. He looked at the forward viewport. At first he saw nothing, just the endless dark of space and the distant stars that would never care whether the luminous tide lived or died. The universe was vast and cold and indifferent to the fate of 43 Aquari gasping their last breaths on a broken ship. Then space itself began to ripple. It started as a distortion in the starfield, a shimmer, like heat waves rising from sun-baked stone warping the light from distant suns. The stars bent and twisted around a point of absolute darkness that seemed to devour light itself. The darkness grew and grew and grew. Hyperspace was tearing open. A wound in reality, a gateway between the normal universe and the impossible realm where faster-than-light travel became possible. And then like a predator, rising from the depths of the darkest ocean, like a nightmare clawing its way into the waking world, the human ship emerged. Zaren's breath, what little breath he had left, caught in his chest and wouldn't release. The Warhammer was beautiful in the way a hurricane is beautiful, in the way a supernova is beautiful. Beautiful and terrible and utterly beyond comprehension. It was massive beyond anything the database had prepared him for. The forward hull came through the hyperspace aperture first, black as the void itself covered in armor plating, so thick it looked like it could shrug off asteroid impacts. The plating was scarred, pitted, marked by battles that Zaren couldn't even imagine. Weapon emplacements jutted from the surface like the spines of some ancient deep-sea horror. Railgun batteries that could accelerate projectiles to relativistic speeds. Missile launchers that could unleash swarms of destruction. Energy projectors whose purpose Zaren couldn't even begin to guess. Every surface bristled with the tools of violence. Every angle was designed for lethality. The ship kept coming, and coming, and coming. 2.5 kilometers of warship unfolding from hyperspace like death itself, arriving for an appointment it had no intention of missing. Along the flanks, Zaren could see more scars, burn marks from energy weapons, impact craters from kinetic strikes. Places where entire sections of armor had been torn away and replaced with newer plating that didn't quite match the original. Every mark told a story. Every scar was a testament to battles fought and survived and learned from. This ship had seen war. Real war, not the theoretical conflicts that council military academies taught about, not the sanitized versions of violence that appeared in historical databases. This ship had faced enemies that wanted to destroy it and had emerged victorious through superior firepower and superior will. The forward section was shaped like a wedge designed to ram through obstacles, to break formations, to lead charges into the heart of enemy fleets. Sensor arrays glowed red in the darkness, giving the ship the appearance of having eyes. Predator eyes, hunter eyes, eyes that tracked movement and calculated firing solutions and never blinked. Along the sides visible through open launch bays, Zaren could see smaller craft, fighters, gunships, assault shuttles. Each one a weapon system in its own right. Each one capable of unleashing destruction on whatever the humans deemed necessary to destroy. This was not a rescue vessel. This was not the ship of explorers or scientists or diplomats. This was an instrument of war, pure and simple. A machine built by a species that understood violence on a fundamental level and had refined it into an art form. By the deep waters, Maris whispered. His face had gone completely pale, his skin taking on the grayish tone of shock. That's what answered our call. That's what's coming for us. Dr. Lyra held Kiva tighter. The youngling had regained consciousness just long enough to see the human ship through the viewport. Now she trembled in her mother's arms, her large eyes wide with primal fear. The kind of fear that evolution had programmed into every prey species. The recognition of a predator. The knowledge of danger beyond comprehension. The Warhammer moved closer, its massive bulk dwarfing the luminous tide. Made their science vessel look like a child's toy floating next to a shark. Made them look like exactly what they were: small and weak and helpless. Gun turrets tracked their movement with mechanical precision. Launch bays stood ready to release death in countless forms. Point defense systems swiveled and aimed and calculated. The entire ship hummed with barely restrained power, like a coiled spring waiting for the moment to release. This was what the Council had warned them about. This was why Earth was marked as forbidden. Because the things that lived there built monsters like this and sent them out into the stars to do what: conquer, destroy, take what they wanted by force. Time would tell. The communication system activated again, the sound cutting through the oppressive silence of the bridge like a knife. Luminous Tide, this is Captain Mordecai of the TDS Warhammer. The voice was different from Admiral Thane's. Calmer, it carried the weight of decades in the quiet confidence of someone who had seen everything the universe could throw at them and was still standing, still fighting, still winning. We are preparing to conduct rescue operations. Please transmit your ship's atmospheric requirements, crew biological specifications, and medical status of all personnel. We need to prepare our facilities properly for your arrival. Zaren moved to the communication console. His hands shook so badly he had to brace them against the panel to activate the controls. He was about to speak to a human, to one of the Deathworlders, to make contact with a forbidden species and violate the most fundamental protocol the Council had. Captain Mordecai, he said, proud, that his voice remained steady even as his body betrayed his fear. "This is Captain Zarin. We, we appreciate your response to our distress call, but I must inform you, we have no weapons. We are a science vessel. We surrender ourselves to your mercy. We ask only that you spare the younglings, the children. Please, they're innocent. They've done nothing to deserve." "Captain Zarin," the human's voice cut him off, but not harshly, not angrily, just firmly, with absolute certainty. "Stop. Just stop right there." Silence. In that silence, Zarin heard his own heartbeat, felt the weight of his crew's lives pressing down on him like a physical thing, wondered if he had just made a fatal mistake. Then Captain Mordecai spoke again, and his voice carried something that Zarin didn't expect. Something he couldn't quite believe he was hearing. Confusion. Genuine puzzlement. Surrender. The human captain sounded honestly baffled by the concept. "Captain Zarin, we're not here to conquer you. We're not here to take anything from you. We received your distress call. We came to rescue your crew. That's it. That's all this is. Now please, we're wasting time you don't have. Do you need medical assistance? Do you have injured personnel? What's your oxygen level?" Zarin blinked. Looked at Maris, who stared back with equal incomprehension. Looked at Dr. Lyra, who held Kiva with an expression caught between hope and disbelief. The massive warship that could have destroyed them with a single salvo. The warriors from a death world. The apex predators that the Council feared above all things. They were asking about medical assistance, about oxygen levels, about how to help, not how to conquer, not what to take, how to help. "Yes," Zarin managed, his voice cracking. "We are dying. Our life support has failed catastrophically. We have injured crew members from the initial impact. And our younglings, our children don't have much time left. His voice broke entirely. He couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't put into words what was happening to those 5 small beings who had trusted him to keep them safe. Another pause. Shorter this time. And when Mordecai spoke again, his voice had changed completely. Become urgent, all business. The voice of a professional who had just been given a mission and would move heaven and earth to complete it. "Understood. We're deploying rescue teams immediately. Medical personnel are suiting up as we speak. Atmospheric specialists are preparing portable life support units calibrated for your biology. Stand by for boarding. Do not attempt to move your injured. We'll come to you." A breath, a heartbeat, then softer, "Captain Zarin. Yes, you made the right call. Your crew is going to be fine. You have my word. Just hold on a little longer. We're coming for you." The transmission ended with a soft click that somehow sounded like a promise. Through the viewport, Zarin watched as sections of the Warhammer's hull opened like flower petals. Smaller craft emerged from the darkness of the launch bays. Sleek shuttles painted in dark colors with medical symbols marked prominently on their hulls. The universal sigils for emergency rescue. Red crosses. Green crescents. Symbols that transcended species and language and culture. They looked fast, dangerous, but they also carried those medical markings with pride visible even across the distance of space. The shuttles approached the luminous tide with careful precision. No aggressive maneuvers, no weapon locks that would have shown up on their sensors. Just steady professional approach vectors calculated to minimize stress on the damaged ship. The first shuttle aligned with their main airlock with the kind of precision that spoke of thousands of hours of training. Zarin heard the clang of docking clamps engaging, felt the vibration through the deck as the 2 ships connected, linked by a temporary bridge across the void. The airlock began its cycling sequence, equalizing pressure between the 2 vessels. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside the bridge. Footsteps that belonged to creatures much larger and heavier than any Aquari. Footsteps approaching with purpose and speed. The bridge door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. The first human stepped inside. To be continued in next response due to length. The human was huge, taller than any Aquari by half a meter at least, broader across the shoulders than seemed physically possible. It wore powered armor that made it look even more massive, even more intimidating. The armor was military green with scorch marks and dents that spoke of real combat. Battle damage. Proof that this warrior had faced violence and survived. A helmet covered its face, completely displaying tactical readouts and sensor data through a reflective visor that gave it an alien robotic appearance. Inhuman. Machine-like. The human carried a weapon maglocked to its thigh, a sidearm that looked capable of punching holes through bulkheads. But its hands were empty. Instead, they held a medical scanner and what looked like a portable atmospheric analyzer. It stopped just inside the doorway. For a long moment, too long, far too long, it stood perfectly still. Assessing, calculating. Zarin could see himself reflected in that mirrored visor. A small, fragile thing on a dying ship. Prey. Then the human reached up with deliberate slowness and removed its helmet. The face underneath was like nothing Zarin had ever seen before. Pale skin, short brown hair cut in a practical style, a strong jaw and a straight nose, eyes that were startlingly blue like deep water under direct sunlight. But it was the scars that caught his attention. 3 parallel lines across the left cheek, old injuries that had healed but left their mark. Evidence of violence survived. It was the face of a female. And despite the warrior's armor, despite the weapon at her side, despite everything the database had told him about human aggression, her expression was gentle, concerned, almost kind. "I'm Commander Astra," she said in carefully pronounced a query. Her accent was thick, the words shaped by a mouth not designed for their language, but the effort was unmistakable. She had learned their language, studied it, cared enough to try. "We're here to help. I need you all to stay calm. We're going to get you out of here safely." More humans entered the bridge behind her. They moved with military precision, controlled, efficient, purposeful, but their focus was entirely on the dying Aquari crew, not on weapons, not on tactical positions, not on anything except helping. They carried medical equipment, portable life support devices, emergency supplies, stretchers, everything needed for a rescue operation. One of them, a large male with gentle eyes visible through his open helmet visor, went immediately to the younglings. He moved with surprising grace for something so massive in powered armor, kneeling beside Kiva with the careful movements of someone who understood how to approach frightened children. "Easy there, little one," he said softly in accented but understandable Aquari. The translator worked overtime to convert his words, but the tone needed no translation. It was universally calming, the voice of someone who cared. "My name is Dr. Thorne. I'm a doctor. I'm going to help you breathe better, all right? This might feel a little strange, but I promise it won't hurt." He pulled out a small breathing mask from his medical kit and so carefully placed it over Kiva's gills and nose. The device activated immediately, delivering oxygen-rich atmosphere calibrated for Aquari biology. The change was immediate, dramatic. Kiva's labored breathing eased. Color began returning to her pale skin. Her eyes, which had been dimming, brightened again with something that looked like hope. Dr. Thorne smiled at her. The expression transformed his face completely. "There you go. Better, yes, just keep breathing, nice and slow. You're going to be fine." He moved to the next youngling, repeating the process with the same infinite patience and care. Zarin watched in stunned silence as these warriors from a death world moved through his bridge like they had done this 1,000 times before. They checked vital signs with practiced efficiency, administered oxygen to those who needed it most, treated injuries with medical supplies that looked more advanced than anything in the Council's inventory. Not once did they demand anything. Not once did they threaten or intimidate or show any sign of the predatory aggression the database had promised. They were just helping, simply that. Nothing more, nothing less. Commander Astra approached Zarin. Up close, she was even more imposing. The armor added bulk and height, but even without it, she would have towered over him. Yet she moved carefully, slowly, like she understood exactly how frightening her presence might be to someone half her size who had been taught to fear her species. "Captain Zarin," she said, her blue eyes meeting his, "we need to evacuate your crew to our medical bay. Our ship has facilities that can treat your people properly. Can you walk or do you need assistance?" Zarin tried to form words. Failed. His mind was struggling to process what he was seeing, what was happening. The disconnect between expectation and reality was too vast to bridge easily. "You're really here to help us, not to take advantage of our weakness." Astra's expression softened even further. Something that might have been sadness flickered across her scarred face. "Captain, I don't know what you've been told about humans, but we don't attack people who call for help. We don't prey on the vulnerable. When someone sends a distress signal, we answer it. That's what we do. That's who we are." She extended her hand, a human gesture Zarin recognized from his studies of various species, an offer of assistance, of friendship. The hand was easily twice the size of his own, fingers that could crush bone if they chose to, a hand built for violence if it needed to be. But the gesture was unmistakable, and the expression on Commander Astra's face was sincere, open, honest. Zarin looked at that extended hand. looked at the humans working to save his crew with no demands, no conditions, no expectations of payment, looked at Dr. Thorne, who was now treating the second youngling with the same infinite care he had shown Kiva, speaking softly to calm the child's fears. These were supposed to be monsters, apex predators, Deathworlders who knew only violence and conquest. But all he saw were people trying to save lives. He reached out. His webbed hand looked impossibly small against her armored palm. He took her hand. Her grip was gentle, careful. She helped him to his feet with surprising tenderness, supporting his weight without making him feel weak or helpless. "Let's get you and your crew somewhere safe," she said. Her voice was firm but kind, professional but compassionate. "You've had a long day, Captain. A terrible day. But it's over now. You're safe. We've got you." Standing there holding the hand of a human warrior from a forbidden world, surrounded by his crew being saved by creatures the galaxy feared, Zarin felt something fundamental shift inside him. Everything he had been taught about Deathworlders might be wrong. Everything. And that realization was almost as terrifying as the dying had been. The transport shuttle was nothing like the gentle research vessels Zarin knew. Where Aquarius ships emphasized organic curves and flowing aesthetics, this was all hard angles and reinforced metal. Every surface was functional, utilitarian, built for purpose rather than beauty. Weapon storage lined the walls, though the weapons themselves had been removed for this medical run. The seats were designed for armored soldiers twice the size of any Aquarius. Emergency equipment was secured in overhead compartments marked with symbols Zarin was only beginning to recognize. This was a machine built for war that had been temporarily repurposed into an ambulance. The contradiction should have been jarring. Instead, it felt strangely reassuring. These beings knew violence intimately enough to build their entire civilization around it. Yet they chose to use these tools of war to save strangers. Zarin sat strapped into a seat far too large for his frame and watched Dr. Thorne work on the most critically injured Aquarius crew members. The human's massive hands moved with surprising delicacy. Scanners swept over pale skin, gathering the data that appeared on a holographic display only he could see. Injectors delivered compounds the doctor had synthesized during the 4-hour journey, here medications tailored specifically for Aquarius biology. Every movement was practiced. Professional. The work of someone who had saved countless lives and would save countless more. "How long have your people been practicing medicine on other species?" Zarin asked. His voice came out rough. The oxygen mask over his face helped him breathe, but speaking still took effort after hours of oxygen deprivation. Dr. Thorne looked up from his patient. His face was kind, patient, utterly without guile. "We haven't, Captain. You're the first non-human patients we've ever treated." Zarin stared at him. The statement made no sense. "But you knew exactly what to do for our biology. The atmospheric mix, the medications, the proper medical protocols, everything was perfect. Your distress call included biological data about your species. We analyzed it during our approach. Had our best xenobiologist working around the clock to understand your physiology." The doctor returned his attention to his patient, checking vital signs with practiced efficiency. "The principles of trauma medicine are fairly universal across carbon-based life. Stop the bleeding, restore oxygen flow, stabilize vital systems, prevent shock. The details change from species to species, but the fundamentals don't." The shuttle banked slightly, adjusting its trajectory. Through the small viewport, Zarin could see the Warhammer growing larger as they approached. The massive dreadnought filled more and more of the view until it seemed to block out the stars themselves. "You risked your lives," Zarin said quietly, the words barely audible over the shuttle's engines, "to save complete strangers. From a species you'd never even met before." Dr. Thorne's hands never stopped moving, never hesitated in their practiced dance of healing. "Someone called for help. We answered. Isn't that what decent people do, Captain? The Council." Zarin paused, unsure how to phrase it. "The Council says your people are dangerous, that you solve problems through violence." "We are dangerous." The doctor's voice was matter-of-fact, honest. "Very dangerous. We've had to be. Earth isn't a gentle world. It made us strong because weakness meant extinction. But being capable of violence and choosing violence are two very different things." He looked up, meeting Zarin's eyes. "We learned to fight because we had to survive. But we also learned that survival means more than just staying alive yourself. It means protecting others. It means helping those who can't help themselves. That's what separates civilization from barbarism." The shuttle docked with a metallic clang that echoed through the hull. The rear ramp lowered and Zarin got his first real look inside a human warship. The hangar bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold 10 ships the size of the luminous tide with room to spare. The ceiling stretched up and up until it disappeared into harsh lighting and shadow. The deck was marked with painted lines showing landing zones, maintenance areas, ammunition storage, emergency stations. Fighter craft sat in neat rows along the walls, sleek killing machines painted in matte black with weapon hardpoints bristling from their wings. The nameplate on the nearest one read Valkyrie 7 in angular human script. Ground vehicles that looked like they could punch through reinforced walls sat in their designated spaces. Racks of equipment, whose purpose Zarin couldn't even guess, lined the far wall. Everything was functional, efficient, purposeful. There was no beauty here in the traditional sense, no art for art's sake, no wasted space. This was a ship built by a species that had learned hard lessons about survival and had no intention of forgetting them. But as Zarin was carefully helped down the shuttle ramp by Commander Astra, he noticed something else. Something that didn't fit the image of ruthless warriors he'd been taught to expect. Signs had been posted throughout the hangar bay. Human writing with hastily added query translations beneath the script, a bit rough but clearly sincere. Arrows pointing to medical facilities. Instructions for emergency procedures. Information about atmospheric controls and environmental settings. Warnings about areas with different gravity settings. Someone had spent hours, probably many hours, preparing for their arrival, making sure the Aquari crew would know where to go, how to stay safe, what to expect. Small details that showed care. Consideration. Planning that went beyond simple rescue protocols. A young human approached Commander Astra as they crossed the hangar deck. He wore a technician's uniform, his face eager and nervous, like a student hoping to impress a teacher. "Ma'am, the special quarters are ready. Temperature and humidity are set for aquatic comfort. We've installed translation systems with real-time protocols. The atmospheric mix matches their homeworld specifications." "Good work, Rook." Astra nodded approvingly, and the young technician's face lit up with pride. "Make sure our guests know they're welcome here. This is their home for however long they need it." Technician Rook turned to Zarin. He straightened his posture, clearly nervous, then spoke in carefully practiced a query that was atrociously accented but clearly sincere. "Welcome, friends of water. We are honored to help you. Please, if you need anything, anything at all you ask, yes." The grammar was wrong. The pronunciation was even worse. But the young human's face was so earnest, so genuinely happy to meet them, despite having been taught nothing about their species until a few hours ago, that Zarin found himself nodding in acknowledgement. "Thank you," he managed. "Your hospitality is unexpected, but appreciated." Rook's face lit up like he'd just been given the greatest gift in the universe. He practically bounced on his feet before remembering his military bearing and straightening again. "You are most welcome, very most welcome." The medical bay was on deck 7. Zarin insisted on walking there despite the weakness in his legs, though Commander Astra stayed close beside him, ready to catch him if his oxygen-deprived body gave out. The quarters of the Warhammer were wide and tall, designed for humans in powered armor to move freely, 8 feet high at least, wide enough for 4 armored soldiers to walk abreast. Exposed conduits and pipes ran along the ceilings, color-coded, in ways Zarin was beginning to understand. Red for fire suppression, blue for water, yellow for power, green for atmosphere. Warning labels were everywhere in multiple languages now. Human script, query flowing characters, and what looked like symbols from other species. They passed human crew members who stopped to watch the Aquari procession with undisguised curiosity. Zarin tensed each time, waiting for the predatory stares. The hungry eyes, the look of creatures seeing prey and calculating how to take it down. Instead, he saw genuine curiosity, concern for their well-being. One female crew member with gray streaked hair smiled warmly at Kiva as Dr. Lyra carried her past. Another male, massive and scarred, nodded respectfully to Zarin with something that looked like admiration in his eyes. "Your people seem surprised to see us," Zarin observed carefully. "They are," Astra admitted. There was no shame in her voice, no defensiveness, just honesty. "We've never had non-human visitors before. This is a genuine first contact for all of us. Most of the crew have never even seen images of other species. Your council made sure of that. Because the council forbids contact. Because the council fears what they don't understand." Astra's voice carried an edge now. Not anger exactly, but something harder. Frustration, perhaps. "We've been trying to establish diplomatic relations for 20 years. Sent communication after communication. Offered peace, offered trade, offered knowledge sharing. Your council won't even return our calls. They just keep marking our space as forbidden and warning others to stay away. The medical bay doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss. The room beyond was sterile and bright lit with the harsh white lighting common to medical facilities across the galaxy. Medical beds lined the walls in neat rows. Equipment hummed and beeped with quiet efficiency. Human medical staff moved with purposeful calm, preparing for the incoming patients. But half the beds had been modified. The atmospheric controls showed settings for aquatic-compatible species. The lighting had been adjusted to frequencies more comfortable for aquatic eyes, softer, more blue-shifted. The temperature was several degrees cooler than humans would find comfortable. Every detail had been considered, adjusted, optimized for biology that these humans had only learned about 4 hours ago. We set up these beds based on your biological data, explained one of the doctors, a female with gray hair, pulled back in a severe bun, and steady hands that spoke of decades of practice. They should be more comfortable for your physiology. If anything's not right, if anything causes discomfort or distress, you tell us immediately and we'll adjust it. This is about your comfort in recovery. Zarin watched in amazement as his crew was settled into the modified beds with extraordinary care. Each equerry was monitored, their vital signs displayed on screens that the human medical staff studied with intense focus. Treatments were administered. Injuries were assessed and treated. Every patient was cared for with a level of professionalism that would have impressed any council medical facility. Doctor. Thorne brought Kiva to one of the pediatric beds, smaller with railings designed with children in mind. He checked her vital signs with his scanner, adjusted the oxygen flow to optimal levels, made sure she was comfortable and warm. Then he pulled something from his pocket. It was small, a clear resin cube about the size of Zarin's fist. Inside was a flower preserved in perfect detail. Delicate petals in shades of red and pink, a stem with small thorns, leaves that looked impossibly fragile. This is from Earth, Dr. Thorne said, gently placing it in Kiva's small hands. His voice was soft, the tone every parent uses with frightened children. It's called a rose, one of our most beautiful flowers. My daughter loves them. I wanted you to have something beautiful to look at while you rest, to remind you that even on a warship, there's still room for beauty. The youngling stared at the preserved flower with wide eyes wonder, replacing the fear that had dominated her expression for hours. It was the first time Zarin had seen her smile since the accident, a small smile, tentative but genuine. Dr. Lyra approached the human doctor. Her eyes were wet with tears she was trying to control. Her voice shook when she spoke. Thank you for saving her, for saving all of us, for everything. Dr. Thorne's expression was soft, understanding. He reached out slowly, carefully telegraphing the movement, and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I have a daughter about her age back on Earth. Sarah. She's 9. I can't imagine, he paused, his voice catching slightly. I can't imagine being in your position. The fear you must have felt. But you don't have to be afraid anymore. You're all going to be fine now. That's a promise from one parent to another. Zarin was examined next, his turn in the careful rotation of triage. The human medical staff were gentle but thorough. They asked questions about equerry physiology through the translation systems, made notes on their tablets, learned in real time, adapted their techniques and approaches based on the answers they received. When he was finally settled into his own bed, the oxygen-rich atmosphere washing over him like a blessing, Commander Astra approached his bedside. Captain Zarin, if you're feeling up to it, Admiral Thane would like to speak with you. He understands if you need to rest first. Your health is the priority. Zarin pushed himself upright despite the protests of his exhausted body. Now, only if you're able. The Admiral doesn't want to impose, but there are things he believes you should know. Things about the situation you've found yourself in. No, Zarin swung his legs over the side of the bed, testing his strength. His body still ached, his lungs still burned slightly, but the oxygen-rich atmosphere and the medical treatments had restored some of his vitality. I need to understand who you are, what you are. The Council says one thing, but I'm seeing something very different. I need answers. Astra nodded, respect clear in her expression. Follow me then. The Admiral is waiting. But Captain, if you start to feel weak, you tell me. Your crew needs you healthy. 3 days passed before Zarin was well enough to truly explore the Warhammer. 3 days of rest and recovery in the medical bay. 3 days of watching his crew heal under the care of human doctors who treated them with the same dedication they would give their own people. 3 days of observing humans and trying to reconcile what he saw with everything he'd been taught to believe about Deathworlders. The contradictions were everywhere, impossible to ignore. He watched Marines in the recreation area teaching Maris and the other young Aquari crew members a human game involving small leather spheres and complex rules about strikes and outs and innings. The Warriors laughed when they lost their competitive nature, giving way to good sportsmanship. They cheered enthusiastically when the Aquari won through lucky hits. They treated the aliens like friends instead of prisoners, like equals instead of curiosities. He saw a human he'd come to know, Sergeant Maria Vex, in the mess hall, sitting with Kiva and the other younglings. The sergeant's face was marked with scars that told stories of violence. 3 parallel lines across her left cheek, similar to Commander Astra's marks. A newer scar along her jawline. Her arms bore tattoos that Zarin had learned were military service markers, each symbol representing deployments and battles and campaigns fought. But she spoke softly to the children, her voice gentle despite its natural roughness, taught them a song about stars and sailing ships and finding your way home when you were lost. The younglings sang along in their high, clear voice, mangling the human words, but capturing the melody perfectly. He observed Dr. Lyra and Dr. Thorne in the medical bay working side by side on a joint research project, comparing Aquari and human medical techniques, discussing the similarities and differences in their approaches to trauma care, learning from each other, building something new together, a synthesis of 2 different biological sciences meeting for the first time. Every interaction challenged his assumptions. Every moment aboard this warship revealed a species that was nothing like the monsters the Council had described in their databases and warnings and prohibition protocols. But the ship itself told a different story. On the morning of the 4th day, Commander Astra offered Zarin a comprehensive tour of the Warhammer. He accepted immediately and brought Maris along despite the young navigator's lingering nervousness. His student needed to see this too, needed to understand what they were dealing with, needed to process the same cognitive dissonance that Zarin was struggling with. They walked through corridors lined with weapon systems, past armories stocked with enough firepower to level cities, kinetic weapons, energy weapons, chemical weapons, secured behind multiple layers of protection. Saw training rooms where Marines practiced close-quarters combat with a ferocity that made Maris step back in instinctive fear, his body recognizing predatory violence, even when it was controlled and directed at training dummies. "This is a ship of war," Maris whispered to Zarin in their own language, forgetting that the translation systems were everywhere. "Everything here is designed to kill. Every system, every room, every piece of equipment." Astra heard him anyway. She stopped walking and turned to face them both, her blue eyes serious. "Yes," she said simply. No defensiveness, no apology, just acknowledgement of truth. "It is." She led them to an observation deck that overlooked one of the main railgun batteries. The weapon was massive beyond comprehension. A magnetic accelerator that stretched the length of 3 human measurement units they called football fields, whatever those were. The barrel was thick enough for a human to walk through comfortably. Power conduits the size of trees fed energy to the firing mechanism, glowing faintly with contained force. "This is a Mark 7 electromagnetic mass driver," Astra explained. Her voice was matter-of-fact, professional, the tone of someone describing a tool they knew intimately. "It accelerates a 2-ton tungsten carbide projectile to you to 0.05 times the speed of light. The kinetic energy on impact is equivalent to 50 megatons of conventional explosives. One shot from this weapon can penetrate 40 meters of hardened starship armor. It can destroy a ship this size." She gestured to indicate the luminous tide's dimensions, "in a single hit." Zarin stared at the weapon, his mind doing the mathematics automatically. The numbers were staggering, horrifying. The destructive potential was beyond anything in the Aquari arsenal, beyond anything he'd seen in Council military databases. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why build something like this? Why create weapons of such terrible power? Because sometimes you need to punch through 40 meters of hardened starship armor." Astra's response was immediate, but then her expression softened slightly. "But that's the easy answer. The real answer is more complicated." She turned to face them fully, her scarred face serious. "Captain Zarin, Navigator Maris, I want you to understand something important about humanity. We don't build ships like this because we love war. We don't create weapons like this because we enjoy violence. We build them because we've learned through terrible experience, through losses that haunt us still, that the universe isn't gentle. That there are things out there that want to hurt us, to take from us, to destroy what we've built." She gestured to the massive weapon. "We build these tools because we refuse to be helpless, because we've seen what happens to the weak and the unprepared, because we decided a long time ago that we would rather be feared for our strength then victimized for our weakness. But you saved us, Zarin protested. With all this power with weapons that could have taken anything you wanted, you chose to help. Why, Astra's expression softened further, something almost sad crossing her features. Because strength without compassion is just cruelty. Because power without purpose is just tyranny. We built these ships to protect Captain, to defend, to make sure that when someone needs help, when someone is dying and calling out into the void, we have the power to provide that help, to reach them, to save them. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We fight like devils so we can protect like angels. That's the human way. We learn to be dangerous so we could defend those who can't defend themselves. Does that make sense to you? Maris spoke up, his voice hesitant. But the council says you're naturally aggressive, that you evolved as predators. We did evolve as predators, Astra acknowledged. Earth made us that way. But evolution doesn't define destiny. We chose what to do with the tools nature gave us. We chose to use our strength to protect rather than to dominate. That choice, that conscious decision to be more than our base instincts, that's what defines civilization. The tour continued through the afternoon. They saw the engineering sections where massive antimatter reactors powered the ship, their containment fields maintained by systems so complex Zarin couldn't begin to understand them. The ammunition fabrication plants that could manufacture thousands of rounds per hour, never running out as long as raw materials were available. The fighter bays with their precisely organized chaos of maintenance crews and pilots preparing for missions. But they also saw the civilian evacuation equipment, entire decks dedicated to housing refugees with facilities to support thousands of displaced people from multiple species. The rescue pods, equipped with extended life support and emergency beacons. The cargo bays that could be converted to temporary hospitals, schools, or living spaces within hours. The Warhammer was a weapon, yes, the most fearsome weapon Zarin had ever encountered, but it was also a shield, a tool for protection, a resource for salvation. The contradictions were giving him a headache. By the time they returned to the habitation section, Zarin's mind was spinning with information and impossible contradictions. He needed to speak with someone in authority. Needed answers to questions he was only beginning to formulate. Needed to understand the larger picture of what was happening between humans and the Council. As if summoned by his thoughts, a young human officer approached the same eager technician Rook from the hangar bay. Captain Zarin, Admiral Thane requests your presence in his ready room, if you're able and willing, sir. Now, at your earliest convenience, Captain, the Admiral said to emphasize that this is a request, not an order. You're not a prisoner and you're not under our authority, but he has information he believes you should have, information about your situation. Zarin looked at Maris. The navigator nodded slightly, his curiosity overcoming his nervousness. Whatever they were about to learn, they would face it together. Lead the way, technician. Admiral Thane's ready room was Spartanly furnished in a way that reminded Zarin of military commanders across species. A desk made of dark metal, chairs that prioritize function over comfort, walls covered with star charts and tactical displays showing human space and the regions beyond. Military commendations in simple frames. No personal items, no decorations beyond what served a purpose. Everything was functional. Nothing was wasted. The room of someone who had learned to value efficiency above all else. The Admiral himself stood looking out a large viewport at the stars beyond. He was tall, even for a human. Astra had to be at least 6 feet, and this man was taller still. His hair had gone entirely gray, almost white at the temples. His face was lined with age and experience, each wrinkle telling a story. When he turned to face them, Zarin saw eyes that had witnessed things beyond imagining, eyes that had seen death and loss and victory and still carried the weight of every decision. Captain Zarin, Navigator Maris, please have a seat. His voice was measured, controlled, but not cold. There was warmth there, carefully modulated. They sat in chairs that had been adjusted for aquarii proportions. Someone had thought of that detail, had taken the time to make their guests comfortable. Thane settled into his own chair with the careful movements of a man whose bones ached from old injuries that never quite healed right. He studied them for a moment in silence that stretched just long enough to be slightly uncomfortable. How is your crew? He asked finally. Recovering well, thanks to your medical team. Doctor. Thorne and his staff have been exceptional. Good, that's very good, Thane nodded slowly. And you, how are you adjusting to being aboard a human warship? Zarin paused, choosing his words carefully. Honesty seemed important with this man. Confused, Admiral. Everything I was taught about your species said you were dangerous, violent. not to be trusted under any circumstances. But all I've seen is kindness and professionalism and care that exceeds anything I've experienced in my years with the Council. And that confuses you. Yes, sir, it confuses me greatly. Thane leaned back in his chair, studying Zirin with those ancient eyes. Captain, you said in your distress call that you're part of the Galactic Council. Tell me about this council. What is it? What does it represent? Zirin glanced at Maris, then back to the Admiral. The Council is a union of peaceful species. Over 200 member civilizations dedicated to exploration, science, and cooperation. We share knowledge freely. We help each other advance. We promote peace throughout the galaxy through diplomacy and mutual understanding. Sounds very admirable. It is, Admiral. It's the greatest achievement of galactic civilization. A place where species that might have warred with each other instead work together for common goals. And Earth, Thane's eyes narrowed slightly, his gaze becoming more intense. What does your council know about Earth and humanity? Zirin felt uncomfortable under that steady gaze, like he was being evaluated, judged. Earth is listed as a restricted world in our databases. Death World classification. Contact is absolutely forbidden under Protocol Article 7. Why is contact forbidden? Because, Zirin trailed off. How could he say this diplomatically to representatives of the species in question? Because the database says that Death World species are too dangerous, that they only understand violence and conquest, that they cannot be trusted to interact peacefully with civilized species. Thane was silent for a long moment. Then he stood moving to a wall display with measured steps. He touched it with one hand, and the screen lit up, showing a map of local space. Stars and systems marked in notation that followed Council standards. Captain, do you recognize this region of space? Zirin studied the map carefully. The star patterns were familiar. That's where we were stranded, the Kepler 442 sector. We were mapping it for potential colony worlds. Exactly. Thane touched the screen again, and the map zoomed in closer. And do you see these installations? Highlighted markers appeared across the display. Dozens of them, hundreds. Military bases, shipyards, weapons platforms, supply depots, fortified positions. Zirin's blood went cold. His heart seemed to stop beating. Those are council facilities, military installations. 3 different species. Thane confirmed, his voice quiet. Controlled, but with an undercurrent of something harder. The Vorak Empire, the Hijgamani Coalition, the Rael Confederacy, all members of your peaceful council. All building military infrastructure in space we consider part of our security perimeter. All expanding steadily toward human colonies. Zirin couldn't find words. His mind was reeling. I didn't know. I swear I had no idea this was happening. Of course you didn't. Thane's voice held no accusation. Just statement of fact. Your exploration missions always go in the opposite direction from this sector, don't they? The Council makes sure their science ships never see what their military is doing. It was true. Zirin had never been assigned to explore anything near human space. None of his colleagues had either. That sector was always handled by different departments, different command structures. Now he understood why. They're expanding toward your worlds, he said slowly, the implications crashing over him like waves. Building military positions that encircle your space. More than that, Captain. Thane highlighted another section of the map showing trade routes and commercial shipping lanes. They're cutting off our trade routes, threatening our colonies, applying economic pressure, building up forces for what our analysts believe, what our intelligence confirms is a coordinated invasion plan targeting human-controlled space. Maris stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the deck. That's impossible. That's absolutely impossible. The Council promotes peace. We would never approve military aggression. We don't even have standing armies in the way you do. Thane looked at the young navigator with something like pity in his ancient eyes. Son, let me ask you something. How many species in your council evolved on harsh worlds, planets with dangerous predators, extreme weather patterns, scarce resources that required constant struggle? Maris opened his mouth to answer, closed it, thought hard, searching his memory of council species databases. I can't think of any. All the member species come from stable worlds, garden worlds as we classify them. Neither can I, Thane said quietly. Every council species comes from what humans would call paradise worlds. Abundant resources, gentle climates, no major predators to fear, no competition for survival, no pressure to evolve strength or cunning or the ability to defend themselves. He turned back to Zarin, his expression serious. Your council isn't promoting peace, Captain. It's maintaining control. It's created a civilization where only soft, gentle species are allowed to participate. And it's systematically keeping out marking as forbidden as dangerous anyone who might challenge their authority. Anyone who refuses to be weak. The door to the ready room opened without warning. A shorter human in an intelligence officer's uniform entered with the confident stride of someone who had every right to be there. His face bore a scar across the left cheek. These humans and their facial scars Zarin noted absently, and his eyes were sharp, calculating, missing nothing. Admiral, he said with a crisp nod. Then to Zarin, Captain, Navigator, we've intercepted a communication you need to hear. It's relevant to your situation. Thane gestured for him to continue. Commander Cade, show them. The intelligence officer activated a holographic projector built into the desk. Sound filled the room. Alien voices speaking in a language the translator identified as Vorak, one of the three species Thane had just mentioned. The voice was harsh, commanding, full of arrogant certainty. Fleet status report, all 32 vessels are ready for Operation Cleansing Tide. Target confirmed, human colony Proxima Prime. Estimated population 50,000 civilians, mostly families and children. Zarin's hearts clenched. 50,000 people. Civilians, families, children like Kiva. The Vorak voice continued with clinical detachment. Attack commences in 4 days' time, mark 0600 local. Primary objectives, strike the medical transports first. Maximum civilian casualties to generate appropriate emotional response from surviving humans. Plant evidence packages containing human weapon signatures and communications. Make it appear conclusively that humans fired on our hospital ships without provocation. Another voice, younger but equally cold. All media packages are prepared, Commander. Footage has been edited to show human ships attacking first. It will be convincing. The Council will have no choice but to classify this as unprovoked Deathworlder aggression. The first voice again. Excellent. Make sure the footage is distributed widely. We need the entire galaxy to see humans for what they really are. Monsters who attack the defenseless. Predators who must be eliminated for the safety of all civilized species. The recording ended with a harsh click. The ready room was silent. Zarin felt like the deck had dropped out from under him, like gravity had reversed, and he was falling into an endless void. They're going to attack civilians, he said, his voice barely a whisper. They're going to murder 50,000 people, including children, and make it look like your fault. Make it look like you attacked them. Yes, Thane said quietly. The single word carried the weight of worlds. But that's a war crime. That violates every principle the Council claims to stand for. Every law of civilized warfare. Every moral code we're taught from childhood. Does it? Commander Cade stepped forward, his scarred face hard. Because it looks to us like this is exactly what your Council stands for. They've marked us as dangerous based on our planet of origin. Forbidden contact to prevent anyone from learning the truth about us. Made sure every species in the galaxy fears us without ever meeting us. And now they're manufacturing the evidence to justify our extermination. I didn't know, Zarin said again. His voice was stronger now, desperate to make them understand. I swear by the deep waters, I didn't know any of this was happening. I'm a scientist, an explorer. I believed in the Council's mission. I believed we were spreading peace. We believe you, Captain. Thane sat back down, his expression weary, sad. You're a scientist, an explorer. You believe in the ideals your Council preaches. But the people running your government, the ones making the real decisions, they're not scientists. They're politicians, bureaucrats, power brokers, and they see us as a threat to their carefully controlled order. Why? Maris asked, his voice breaking slightly. Why would they fear you so much? You saved us. You could have ignored our call, and we would have died quietly and no one would have known. But you helped us instead. Why would that make you dangerous? Because we refused to kneel, Cade said, his voice cold as deep space. Because we won't accept their authority over us. Because we insist on running our own affairs, making our own decisions, living by our own rules. Because we're strong enough to defend ourselves and don't need their protection. That makes us dangerous to their system of control. Thane held up a hand, silencing his intelligence officer. He looked at Zarin with those ancient, knowing eyes. Captain, I'm going to show you something. But I need you to understand what you're about to learn will change everything you thought you knew about the Council and about humanity. It will challenge every assumption you've built your life on. Are you prepared for that? Zarin swallowed hard, nodded. After everything I've seen in the past 3 days, Admiral, I don't think there's anything left that could surprise me. Thane almost smiled. Almost. Don't be so certain. He touched the display again. New images appeared. Photographs, personnel files, communications logs, humans in civilian clothes, humans in council facilities wearing the uniforms of different species diplomatic corps, humans with altered appearances, their features subtly changed to blend in better, humans wearing the insignias of council member governments. Captain Zarin, Thane said slowly, his voice carrying the weight of a revelation that would shatter worlds. Humanity has been inside your galactic council for 180 years. The words didn't make sense at first. They were sounds without meaning syllables that Zarin's brain received but couldn't process, like someone speaking underwater or across vast distances. 180 years inside the council. Zarin stared at the images on the display, his mind trying desperately to reject what his eyes were seeing. Photographs dating back decades. Humans integrated into council society so thoroughly they had become invisible. Faces in crowds, names on personnel rosters, positions in governments and corporations and research institutions. That's impossible, he managed. But even as he said it, he was looking at the evidence, irrefutable, undeniable. The council has security, background checks, genetic screening, cultural verification. There's no way humans could infiltrate our systems for that long without being detected. Your security was designed to keep out typical threats, Commander Cade said, and there was something like pride in his voice. Something like satisfaction at a job done well. Pirates, criminals, spies from rival council factions. It was never designed to detect a species-level infiltration by people who had spent generations learning your languages, your customs, your cultures. People who were willing to undergo genetic modifications to appear more like you. People who were patient enough to spend decades, sometimes entire lifetimes, in deep cover positions. Thane pulled up more files. When the Council classified Earth as forbidden 73 years ago, we had a choice to make. We could rage against it. We could demand recognition. We could force contact through military action. We certainly had the capability. Or we could be patient. We could watch and learn and prepare. We chose patience. Cade continued, his fingers dancing across the display to bring up more evidence. We infiltrated your government at every level. We learned your languages until we could speak them better than natives. We studied your customs until we understood the subtle social cues that separate insiders from outsiders. We became you in every way that mattered. Zarin's mind was reeling. He looked at the evidence with growing horror and reluctant admiration. The first 30 years, he said slowly, pieces falling into place. You said it took 30 years to bypass our security. To perfect the techniques, Cade confirmed. The first agents were discovered and expelled. We learned from those failures, adapted our approaches, improved our methods. By year 30, we had operatives in positions where they could recruit and train the next generation. Human children born in council space, raised speaking your languages, educated in your schools. To all external examination, they were council citizens. For 6 generations, Thane said quietly, we've been 10 steps ahead of your leadership. We've had access to your communications, your military planning, your diplomatic strategies. We've known about every decision before it was publicly announced, every policy shift, every secret agreement. Maris had gone pale, his skin taking on the grayish tone of extreme shock. All this time, you've been inside our government, watching us, manipulating us. Not manipulating, Thane corrected firmly. Watching, documenting, learning. We never used our intelligence to harm the Council or its member species. We never sabotaged your efforts or undermined your legitimate interests. We just observed and prepared for the day when your fear of us would inevitably turn to action. Zarin felt dizzy. The room seemed to tilt around him. Why didn't you expose the military buildup? Why didn't you warn the Council's assembly? If you had evidence of these 3 species preparing for war, why stay silent? Because exposure would have burned our intelligence network and achieved nothing. Thane said, his voice heavy with the weight of hard decisions made. Who would have believed us, the dangerous Deathworlders claiming the peaceful council is the aggressor? They would have dismissed it as propaganda, as an attempt to sow discord, and they would have launched a massive counterintelligence operation that would have destroyed decades of careful work. Cade pulled up a new file. Besides Captain, the military buildup isn't the real story. It's a symptom of something much larger, something that's been happening for centuries. The display showed historical data, species joining the council, trade agreements, economic integration, political alignment, a pattern that repeated across 200 civilizations over the course of 1,000 years. Your council doesn't just promote peace, Kate explained. It enforces compliance. Every species that joins must agree to certain conditions. They must adopt council economic standards. They must integrate their military forces into council command structures. They must accept council jurisdiction over their foreign policy. Slowly, steadily, they lose sovereignty until they are just another administrative unit in a galactic empire that doesn't call itself an empire. That's not true, Maris protested, but his voice lacked conviction. We're a voluntary association of equals. Are you, Thane asked gently. Can any member species withdraw from the council? Can they pursue independent foreign policy? Can they maintain military forces outside council oversight? Can they trade with non-council entities without approval? Silence. Maris had no answer because the answer was no. No species could do those things once they joined. The council's rules were absolute. We're the threat, Thane continued, because we refuse to accept those conditions. Because we maintain our independence. Because we prove that it's possible to achieve advanced civilization without surrendering sovereignty to a bureaucratic superstate. Zaren's worldview was crumbling. Everything he'd built his life on. Every assumption. Every belief. Show me the rest, he said quietly. Whatever else you know, I need to see all of it. Thane nodded slowly. Commander Cade, the intelligence officer, pulled up more files. Communications intercepts, financial records, strategic planning documents. Operation Witness, Cade said, highlighting a classified document. Your mission, Captain Zaren, the Luminous Tides assignment to the Kepler 442 sector. Look at the authorization chain. Zaren read the document with growing horror. His mission orders. But underneath the standard exploration directives was another layer, a classified addendum he'd never seen. They sent you here deliberately, Cade said, his voice hard. The faulty sensor data that didn't detect the asteroid field, that wasn't a malfunction. That was sabotage. Council intelligence planted the navigation error knowing you'd fly into danger, knowing you'd have to call for help, knowing the only rescue option would be Earth. They wanted us to die, Zaren whispered, or be attacked, or exploited. Any of those outcomes would have served their propaganda. They didn't expect option D, Thane said quietly. They didn't expect us to simply help you, to ask for nothing in return, to treat you with the same care we'd give our own people. That option broke their entire operational plan. Maris was shaking his head in denial. This is too much. It's too elaborate. Why go to such lengths? Because they're preparing for war, Kate said bluntly, and they need public support. They need every council species to believe that humans are the monsters they've been taught to fear. Operation Witness was designed to provide that proof, to give them the incident they needed to justify military action. Zaren looked at the evidence spread across the displays, the military bases, the false flag operation, the manufactured crisis that had nearly killed his entire crew, including 5 children, whose only crime was curiosity about the universe. The Proxima attack, he said slowly. The Vorik plan to strike the hospital ships. That's the real operation, isn't it? Operation Witness failed, so they moved to Plan B. Exactly, Thane confirmed. In 4 days, the Vorak fleet will attack Proxima Prime. They'll target the hospital ship's first civilian medical transports, marked with universal neutrality symbols. They'll kill 400 medical personnel and 200 patients. They'll broadcast edited footage showing us firing first. And the Council will use it as justification for full-scale invasion of human space. Unless someone witnesses the truth, Zaren said, understanding washing over him. Unless there's an independent observer who can testify to what actually happened. Yes, Zaren stood his legs steadier now despite the emotional earthquake he'd just experienced. You want me to testify, to tell the Council what I've seen, what I've learned. We want you to make your own choice, Thane said firmly, standing to face him. Captain, you can return to Council Station Harmony right now. File your standard mission report. Resume your life. We won't stop you. We won't threaten you or coerce you. You're free to go, and you'll go with our thanks for letting us help you. But you'll do it knowing what we know, seeing what we've seen, understanding that the Council you serve has been lying to you your entire life, that they tried to kill you and your crew for political purposes, that they're about to commit mass murder and blame us for it. Thane moved to the viewport, looking out at the stars. Or you can come with us to Proxima Prime. Witness what happens when the Vorak attack. See how humans fight when we're defending the innocent. Watch us choose restraint when we could choose annihilation. And then when it's over, decide for yourself who the real monsters are. Zarin looked at the star maps. At the evidence of council deception spread across multiple displays. At the humans who had saved his crew, when they had every reason to let them die, when letting them die would have been easier and safer. He thought of Captain Vel, his mentor, dead because the council delayed rescue for bureaucratic reasons, dead because protocols mattered more than lives. He thought of Kiva, saved by a human doctor who had never treated an alien before but had tried anyway, who had given her a preserved flower, because even on a warship there should be room for beauty. A doctor with a daughter her age who understood a parent's fear. He thought of Sergeant Vex teaching younglings songs about finding home, of Commander Astra removing her helmet to show a face instead of a mask, of Technician Rook practicing a query greetings because making guests feel welcome mattered, of Dr. Thorne working alongside Dr. Lyra to build medical knowledge that would help both species. He thought of everything he believed about the galaxy and realized how much of it had been built on lies. If I go with you, he said slowly, I'll be violating every council regulation, every protocol, every oath I swore when I became a captain. Yes, Thane agreed, you will. My career will be over. They'll strip my rank, revoke my commission, probably imprison me for violating the forbidden contact protocols. Almost certainly. And if I testify about what I've seen, they'll never believe me. They'll say I was coerced, brainwashed, that the Deathworlders corrupted me with drugs or threats or psychological manipulation. That's very likely, yes. Zarin met the Admiral's eyes. Then I'll go to Proxima Prime. I'll witness the battle, and I'll tell the truth to anyone who will listen, whether they believe me or not. Because my mentor died waiting for help that came too late. Because your people saved my crew when no one else would. Because someone needs to stand up and say what's really happening, even if it costs them everything. Thane nodded slowly, respect clear in his weathered features. Thank you, Captain. I know this isn't an easy choice. Don't thank me yet, Admiral. I haven't done anything but make a decision. Whether it matters in the end, whether anyone listens, whether I can change anything at all, we'll see. But I have to try. Maris stepped forward, his young face set with determination. Captain, if you're going, I'm going too. Maris. No, sir. The navigator's voice was firm, certain. You taught me that an explorer's job is to discover the truth and share it with others. That we're not just mapping stars, we're mapping understanding. You taught me that truth matters more than comfort. That's what we're doing here. Discovering truth. And I need to see this with my own eyes. Not take your word for it. Not trust anyone's word. I need to witness. Zarin felt a surge of pride in his student, his friend. All right, we go together. We witness together. We testify together. And us, Dr. Lyra's voice came from the doorway. She stood there with several other Aquari crew members behind her. They must have been listening, or perhaps the translation systems had broadcast the conversation. Do we get a choice? Of course, Thane said immediately. Everyone gets a choice, always. Dr. Lyra stepped into the room, her expression determined. Then we choose to come too. All of us. You saved our lives, and then you showed us the truth even when it would have been easier to let us remain ignorant. We owe you the truth in return. We'll witness. We'll testify. We'll stand with you. Thane moved to a communications panel. Captain Mordecai, this is the Admiral. Set course for Proxima Prime, maximum speed. We have 4 days to get there, and I intend to arrive early. We'll be bringing guests. Through the view screen, Zarin felt the subtle vibration as the Warhammer's engines thrummed to life. The ship turned in space, aligning its massive bulk toward human territory, toward a colony that was about to become a battlefield, toward a confrontation that would determine the future of human council relations, possibly the future of the entire galaxy. There's something else you should know, Commander Cade said, pulling up one more file. The Vorak are not acting alone. Our intelligence indicates they have tacit approval from at least 15 council member species, maybe more. This isn't a rogue operation, it's a coordinated test of human resolve. A test, Maris asked. They want to see how we respond to provocation. If we retaliate with overwhelming force, they'll point to it as proof of our savage nature and justify broader military action. If we don't defend ourselves adequately, they'll see it as weakness and press the attack. It's a no-win scenario by their calculation. What will you do? Zarin asked Thane. The Admiral's expression was grim. We'll do what we always do, Captain. We'll protect our civilians. We'll defend our territory. And will fight so precisely, so professionally, that even their propaganda won't be able to twist the truth. We'll show the galaxy exactly who we are, and we'll let the evidence speak for itself. Can you win? They're bringing 32 warships. You mentioned the defensive fleet is only 8 ships. We're outnumbered 4-1, Thane acknowledged. We've faced worse odds, and we have advantages they don't expect. Superior weapons, better training, decades of experience fighting when outnumbered. But yes, it will be costly. People will die. Good people. On both sides. He turned to face Zarin fully. That's why your testimony matters so much, Captain. You can tell the galaxy that we didn't want this fight, that we tried to avoid it, that when it came, we fought with honor and restraint. Your voice, an outsider's voice, a council officer's voice carries weight that ours never could. Zarin nodded, understanding the burden he was accepting. How long until we reach Proxima? 2 days at maximum hyperspace velocity. We'll use the time to prepare, to train, to ready ourselves for what's coming. And what about my crew? What will they do during the journey? Thane smiled slightly. Whatever they want, Captain. They're guests, not prisoners. They can rest. They can explore the ship. They can learn about humanity, or they can help us prepare if they're willing. We have cultural specialists who would love to learn about a query society, medical personnel who want to expand their xenobiology knowledge, engineers who are fascinated by your ship's organic design principles. 2 days to learn about each other, Zarin mused, before everything changes. Before the truth comes to light, Thane corrected. Change is already happening, Captain. It happened the moment you sent that distress call. It happened when we chose to answer. It's happening now in this room as you choose to stand for truth instead of comfortable lies. The battle at Proxima is just when the galaxy will finally see what's been building for decades. Commander Cade deactivated the displays and the star maps faded into darkness. Captain Zarin, Navigator Maris, I'll have quarters prepared for extended stay. We'll brief you on the tactical situation as we approach Proxima. You'll have full access to our intelligence on the Verac fleet composition and battle plans. One more thing, Thane said as they moved toward the door. Your testimony will be more credible if it's comprehensive. If you understand not just what we do, but why we do it. I'm authorizing full access to our historical databases, Earth's history, humanity's struggles, the wars we've fought and the lessons we've learned. It's not pretty. We don't hide our violent past. But it will help you understand who we are and why we've made the choices we've made. Zarin paused at the threshold. Admiral, why are you trusting us with all this information? How do you know we won't use it against you? That we won't share your intelligence network data with the Council? Thane's ancient eyes held his steadily. Because you're a man who values truth over comfort, Captain. Because you made a choice to save your crew instead of following protocols that would have killed them. Because you're here in this room asking hard questions instead of accepting easy answers. That's how I know, he paused. And because even if you did share everything with the Council, it wouldn't change our situation. They already fear us. They're already preparing to attack. The truth about our intelligence network might accelerate their timeline, but it won't change their fundamental strategy. So yes, we're trusting you, because that's what decent people do. Zarin left the ready room with his mind spinning and his heart heavy with the weight of knowledge. The corridor outside seemed different now. The ship felt different. Everything felt different. He wasn't aboard an enemy vessel. He was aboard the ship of a species fighting for survival against a galaxy that had judged them without trial. The countdown to Proxima Prime had begun. And when they arrived, the entire galaxy would learn whether the Council's fears were justified or whether they had created the very enemy they claimed to fear. The 2-day journey to Proxima Prime became a crash course in human civilization. Zarin spent hours in the ship's historical archives accessing databases that humanity had carefully maintained throughout their violent history. He watched recordings of their wars, brutal, terrible conflicts that made Council skirmishes look like children's games. He saw weapons that could devastate entire cities, conflicts that killed millions, ideologies that set brother against brother. But he also saw what came after: the peace treaties, the reconciliation, the slow, painful process of learning from mistakes and building something better. He watched footage of human peacekeeping forces defending civilians from harm, even when those civilians were from nations that had been enemies weeks before. He saw disaster response teams pulling survivors from rubble without asking about nationality or religion or politics. He witnessed acts of compassion that transcended the violence humanity was capable of. We're not proud of our history, Doctor. Thorne told him during one evening discussion in the ship's observation lounge, "We've done terrible things to each other, things that shame us, but we learned from them. We grew. We became something better than our worst impulses." "The council says you're naturally violent," Zirin observed, "that your predatory evolution makes peace impossible." "We are naturally violent," Dr. Thorne admitted. "Evolution made us hunters, gave us instincts for aggression and competition, but it also gave us empathy, the ability to recognize suffering in others, the capacity to choose cooperation over conflict. Nature gave us the tools. We chose how to use them." Kiva sat nearby listening with the intense focus children bring to important conversations. She had recovered fully, her breathing normal, her color healthy, but the experience had changed her, made her older, more thoughtful. "Why do you have weapons if you want peace?" she asked with a child's directness. "Doctor," Thorne smiled gently, "that's a very good question, little one. We have weapons because peace isn't free, because there are people in the galaxy who would hurt others if no one stopped them. We learned that lesson the hard way many times. So we built these ships and these weapons, not because we love war, but because we love peace enough to defend it." Maris spent his time with the tactical officers learning human military doctrine. He sat in on briefing sessions where Marines discussed defensive strategies with a level of sophistication that surprised him. "Why not just destroy the Vorak fleet?" he asked during one session. "You have the firepower. You could eliminate them before they reach the colony." The Marine instructor, a grizzled veteran named Sergeant Major Stone, looked at him with something like disappointment. "Because that's not who we are, son. We could kill them all, easily. Our weapons are superior. Our tactics are better. We could turn their fleet into debris before they knew what hit them. But those ships have crews. Thousands of people who are following orders, who think they're doing the right thing. They're not our enemies. Their leaders' bad decisions are our enemies. So you'll let them attack first, put your own people at risk." "We'll defend ourselves," Stone corrected, "but we'll do it with precision. We'll disable their weapons without destroying their ships when possible. We'll minimize casualties on both sides. We'll fight to protect, not to punish. That's the difference between warriors and murderers." Dr. Lyra worked alongside human medical staff, sharing knowledge about aquarii physiology while learning about human medicine. She was amazed by their emergency protocols, their trauma procedures, their dedication to saving lives even under impossible conditions. "You train every crew member in basic medical care," she observed. "Even the soldiers, even the engineers, everyone. Because you never know when you'll need it," the chief medical officer explained. "Because in a crisis, the person next to you might be the only help available. Because every life matters, and we'll be damned if we lose someone because we weren't prepared." The Aquarii crew integrated into life aboard the Warhammer with surprising ease. They attended human cultural events in the evenings, music performances, storytelling sessions, communal meals where both species shared food and conversation. They trained in the gymnasium learning human exercises and teaching their own in return. They explored the ship's various sections, asking questions that the human crew answered with patience and genuine interest. Sergeant Vex became particularly close to the younglings, teaching them not just songs but Earth history told through music. Songs of struggle and hope, of loss and recovery, of people who faced impossible odds and found the strength to continue. "Your people have suffered greatly," Kiva observed one evening as Vex taught them a melody about a war that had ended decades ago. "We have," Vex agreed, her scarred face gentle. "But we survived, and we learned. That's what matters. Not that we fell, but that we got back up. Not that we hurt, but that we healed. That's the story of humanity, falling and rising, hurting and healing again and again, until we became strong enough to help others who were falling." Technician Rook gave tours of the engineering sections, his enthusiasm infectious as he explained how human technology worked. The Aquarii engineers were fascinated by the robust simplicity of human designs, systems built to survive damage and keep functioning under the worst conditions. "Your redundancy is remarkable," Chief Engineer Tallis observed. "Every critical system has backups, and the backups have backups. We learn not to trust single points of failure," Rook explained proudly. "If something can break, it will break. So we build things that can break and keep working anyway. That's human engineering, assume the worst and prepare for it." On the second day, as they approached Proxima System, Admiral Thane called another briefing. The entire Aquarii crew attended along with the human senior staff. "We'll arrive in 6 hours, Thane announced, his voice carrying across the assembled group. "The Vorak fleet will arrive approximately 18 hours after us. That gives us time to establish defensive positions and prepare the colony for potential evacuation. He brought up a holographic display of Proxima Prime, a beautiful blue-green world orbiting a red dwarf star, home to 50,000 humans who had come to the frontier seeking new opportunities. The colony is primarily civilian: families, children, research scientists, miners, farmers, people building lives on a new world. They're defended by a small garrison and a handful of patrol ships, not nearly enough to repel a fleet of 32 Vorak warships. That's why we're here. Captain Mordecai continued the briefing. The Warhammer plus 7 other ships from the defensive fleet, still outnumbered, but we've worked with worse odds. Commander Cade pulled up tactical data. The Vorak will emerge from hyperspace here using the asteroid belt for initial cover. Their battle plan calls for immediate fighter deployment, followed by missile saturation of the hospital ships. They expect us to either watch in horror or respond with overwhelming force. Either outcome serves their propaganda needs. We're going to give them neither, Thane said firmly. We're going to show the entire galaxy what human military doctrine really looks like. Professional, precise, proportional. We'll defend our civilians without becoming the monsters they claim we are. He looked at Zarin. Captain, you and your crew will be in a secure observation deck during the battle. Armored, protected, with full visual and sensor access to everything that happens. You'll see it all, record it all, witness it all. Afterward, we'll provide you with unedited recordings of the entire engagement. Every sensor feed, every communication, every tactical decision. Complete transparency. You're that confident you'll have nothing to hide, Zarin asked. We're that confident that the truth will speak for itself. The briefing continued for another hour, covering defensive positions, evacuation protocols, rules of engagement that emphasize protecting civilians and minimizing casualties on both sides. Zarin listened with growing respect for the complexity of human military planning. This wasn't the crude violence of berserkers. This was chess played at light speed with lives in the balance. As the meeting ended, Dr. Thorne approached Zarin. Captain, I wanted to give you something. He handed over a small data chip. This contains medical scans and treatment records for your entire crew. If anything happens to us, if the battle goes badly, you'll have documentation of your condition, when you arrived, and how we treated you. Proof that we helped, not harmed. You think you might lose? I think war is unpredictable, the doctor said honestly. I think good people die in battles they should win. I think the universe doesn't care about what should happen. So I prepare for what might happen. He smiled slightly. But I also think we're very good at our jobs. I think we've trained for scenarios like this for decades. I think we're led by people who care more about protecting civilians than about pride or revenge. So yes, I'm confident, but I'm also cautious. That's survival instinct talking. The 6 hours passed like minutes, too fast, too slow. Time became elastic as they approached the moment that would change everything. Zarin stood on the observation deck with Maris and Dr. Lyra watching the human colony grow larger on the screens. A world at peace, unaware that in less than a day, it would become a battlefield. Do you think we're doing the right thing? Maris asked quietly. Staying, witnessing, possibly dying if the battle goes wrong. I think, Zarin said slowly, that truth matters more than safety, that some things are worth the risk, that Captain Vel would be proud we chose to stand for something instead of hiding from hard choices. And if they don't believe us, if we testify and the council dismisses everything we say, then at least we'll know we tried. At least we'll have lived up to our oaths as explorers and scientists. We sought the truth. We found it. We shared it. What others do with that truth is beyond our control. Through the viewport, Proxima Prime turned slowly beautiful and fragile, and utterly unaware of the storm approaching. The countdown had begun. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn whether humanity's defenders were the monsters the Council feared or the guardians the universe needed. The Warhammer dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Proxima system with the subtle shudder that came from transitioning between dimensions of reality. Through the observation deck's massive viewports, Zarin got his first look at the world humans were preparing to defend. Proxima Prime was stunning. A jewel of blue and green orbiting a red dwarf star that bathed it in warm crimson light. Continents spread across the surface like scattered pieces of a puzzle. Oceans that looked darker than Earth's seas colored by the red star's influence. Clouds swirled in familiar patterns, weather systems that followed the same physics everywhere in the universe. And scattered across that beautiful world were the lights of human civilization. Cities, towns, research stations, farms. The scattered points of luminescence that marked places where 50,000 people were living their lives unaware that in less than 18 hours their world might become a graveyard. "It's beautiful," Dr. Lyra whispered, holding Kiva close. The youngling stared at the planet with wonder in her large eyes. "It is," Commander Astra agreed. She had joined them on the observation deck, her powered armor traded for a standard uniform. Without the battle gear, she looked more human, more approachable. The scars on her face told stories, but her eyes held kindness. This was one of the first colonies established after we developed reliable FTL drives. 50 years of hard work. 50 years of people building homes and lives under a new sun. "The Vorak won't care," Maris observed quietly. "They'll destroy it all, just to make a point." "They'll try," Astra corrected, "but they'll have to go through us first. And we're very good at being obstacles." The defensive fleet gathered in formation around the planet, 8 ships against the coming storm. The Warhammer was the largest 2.5 kilometers of armored purpose, but the others were no less dangerous. Frigates, destroyers, each one a masterpiece of human military engineering, each one commanded by captains who had trained their entire careers for moments like this. "All ships, this is Admiral Thane." The voice came through the observation deck speakers, calm and measured. "Defensive formation Delta 7, hospital ships at the center of our sphere. All vessels maintain overlapping fields of fire. No gaps, no blind spots. We protect what matters." Zarin watched the tactical display as the human ships moved into position. The mathematics of it were beautiful, elegant, every angle covered, every approach vector defended. The hospital ships, 3 white vessels marked with red crosses, sat at the center of a protective shell. Those ships held 400 medical personnel and 200 patients. People recovering from mining accidents, from diseases, from the 1,000 small disasters that attended life on a frontier world. People who wore the Red Cross because they had dedicated their lives to healing instead of harming. The Vorak planned to kill them first, to murder healers and patients as the opening move in their manufactured war. Zarin felt rage building in his chest. Cold, hard, fury at the manipulation, at the willingness to commit such evil for political purposes. "How do you stay calm?" he asked Astra. "Knowing what's coming, knowing they plan to murder civilians." "By remembering that anger clouds judgment," she replied. Her voice was steady, professional. "By focusing on what I can control, my training, my preparation, my execution. By trusting that the people around me have done the same. Rage has its place in battle, but it's not in the planning stage." The hours crawled by. Human crews ran final checks on weapon systems. Marine detachments rehearsed boarding actions in case disabled ships needed to be secured. Medical teams prepared for casualties, both human and Vorak. Engineers ensured every backup system was online, every redundancy active. The Aquari crew watched it all with fascination and growing understanding. This wasn't the chaos of bloodlust. This was the careful choreography of professionals who understood that discipline saved lives. Kiva sat with Sergeant Vex in a corner of the observation deck, the scarred warrior teaching the youngling how to braid cord in complex patterns. "A meditation technique," Vex explained. "Something to keep hands busy and minds calm when waiting for violence." "Are you scared?" Kiva asked with a child's directness. "Yes," Vex answered honestly. "Every time before battle, fear means I'm paying attention, means I respect the danger, means I'll be careful and smart instead of reckless." "But you're so strong, you could hurt anyone." "Being able to hurt someone and being willing to are different things, little one. I'm strong so I can protect people who can't protect themselves. So when someone like you is scared, someone like me can be the wall between you and the scary things." 14 hours before the projected Vorak arrival, Captain Mordecai called the Aquari crew to the main briefing room. "We've prepared a secure observation facility for you," he explained, bringing up schematics on the display. "Deck 12, Section 7. It's one of the most heavily armored parts of the ship. You'll have full sensor access, complete communication feeds, real-time tactical displays. You'll see and hear everything that happens, but you'll be safe. As safe as anyone can be on a ship going into battle," Zarin amended. Mordecai smiled slightly. "Exactly, Captain. War is dangerous. But we've put you in the safest possible position to witness what's coming." "Why?" Maris asked. "You could hide us away, show us edited footage after, control what we see. Instead, you're giving us complete access." "Because truth doesn't fear scrutiny," Mordecai replied simply. "Because we want you to see everything, our success and our failures, our precision and our mistakes. We want your testimony to be absolutely accurate. That means complete transparency, Doctor. Lyra raised her hand hesitantly. What about the younglings? Should they watch? This is going to be violent. That's your decision as parents, Mordecai said gently. We can provide quarters where they won't see the battle, or you can let them witness from the observation deck. It's not my place to tell you how to protect your children. The Aquari parents conferred quietly. In the end, they decided the younglings would watch. Kiva and the others had already seen so much, already learned that the universe wasn't always gentle. Better to see humans defending than to wonder what happened in the dark. They need to understand why we're here, Dr. Lyra explained, why we chose to stay and witness. If they don't see what happens, they won't understand the importance of truth. 10 hours before impact. Zarin couldn't sleep. He wandered the corridors of the Warhammer, his mind too active for rest. He found himself in the ship's chapel, a small, quiet room with symbols from multiple human religions arranged respectfully around a central meditation space. Admiral Thane was there sitting alone, his gray head bowed. I'm sorry, Zarin said quietly. I didn't mean to intrude. You're not intruding. Thane looked up, his ancient eyes tired. I don't pray exactly, don't believe in any particular deity, but I find this space helps me think before battle, helps me remember what I'm fighting for. And what are you fighting for, Admiral? The people who can't fight for themselves, the civilians who just want to live their lives in peace, the children who deserve to grow up without fear. He gestured to the empty chapel. Every person on Proxima Prime, every patient in those hospital ships, every colonist who came here hoping for something better. That's what I fight for. Even knowing some of them might die anyway, that you can't save everyone. Especially knowing that. Thane stood, his movements stiff. Because the alternative is to do nothing, to let evil happen unopposed. I've made a lot of hard choices in my life, Captain. I've ordered people into battles where I knew some wouldn't return. I carry those names with me. He touched his chest. Every single one. But I sleep at night because I know I fought for something worth fighting for. 5 hours before impact, the Vorak fleet entered sensor range, 32 warships dropping out of hyperspace exactly where intelligence had predicted. They emerged from the asteroid belt using the floating rocks for initial cover. Contacts confirmed, the sensor officer's calm voice echoed through the ship. 32 Vorak vessels, heavy cruisers, destroyers, and frigate-class ships. They're deploying fighter screens, moving toward the planet on attack vector Charlie 7. In the observation deck, Zarin watched the tactical display update. The Vorak fleet was spread across a wide front, their formation designed to overwhelm defenders with multiple approach angles. It was good tactics, professional tactics, which made what they were about to do even worse. All ships' weapons hold. Admiral Thane's voice carried absolute authority. Do not fire unless fired upon. Let them make the first move. Let the galaxy see who chose violence. 1 hour before projected attack, the Vorak fleet approached at sublight speeds. Their formation remained spread, their fighters ranging ahead like predators searching for weakness. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, the communications officer reported, claiming we've violated their territorial space, demanding we withdraw immediately. We're in our own territory, Captain Mordecai observed dryly. Proxima has been a human colony for 50 years. They know. This is for the record. Building their false narrative. 30 minutes. The Vorak fleet close to weapons range. Their ships bristled with missile pods and energy projectors. Enough firepower to devastate an undefended colony. Not enough to defeat a prepared human defensive fleet, but the Vorak didn't know that yet. Multiple targeting locks, sensors called out. They're painting our ships, and confirmed they're locking weapons on the hospital ships. In the observation deck, Doctor. Lyra gasped. Kiva buried her face in her mother's chest. The other younglings huddled together, their eyes wide with fear they tried to hide. It's okay, Sergeant Vex said quietly, her scarred face calm. Watch what happens next. Watch how humans defend. 10 minutes. Vorak flagship is broadcasting again. Communications reported. They're giving us 60 seconds to withdraw or face destruction. No response, Thane ordered. Let them talk. 60 seconds passed, then 60 more. Then the Vorak attacked. Multiple missile launches. The sensor officer's voice remained professionally calm, even as the tactical display lit up with threats. Count is 240 missiles inbound. Targeting solutions confirming they're all locked on the hospital ships. 240 missiles against 3 defenseless medical vessels. Point defense free. Mordecai's order cut through the tension. Weapons tight on everything else. Engage incoming only. The Warhammer's defensive systems came alive. Rapid-fire railguns tracked the incoming missiles with computer precision. Streams of tungsten penetrators reached out like fingers of death, each round moving at velocities that made them effectively impossible to evade. Zarin watched in awe as the defensive fire created a wall of metal between the missiles and their targets. The first wave of Vorak missiles died in brilliant flashes, their warheads detonating harmlessly in space. Then more. And more. The point defense network was coordinated between all 8 human ships. Every missile was tracked, targeted, destroyed. The overlapping fields of fire left no gaps, no chances, no hope for any missile to penetrate. Not one reached the hospital ships. Vorak are broadcasting communications reported. They're claiming we fired first, showing edited footage of our point defense as of offensive weapons targeting their fleet. Let them broadcast, Thane said calmly. Captain Zarin, are you recording all of this? Every sensor feed, Zarin confirmed, his voice shaking slightly. Every communication, every moment. Good. Now witness what happens next. The Vorak fleet launched a second wave, 300 missiles, this time attempting to overwhelm the defensive systems through sheer numbers. The result was the same, perfect interception. Not one missile survived the journey to its target. Sir, the tactical officer called out. Vorak fleet is moving to attack formation. All vessels advancing. They're committing to close engagement. All ships weapons free, Thane ordered. Target Vorak weapons systems only. Disable, don't destroy. Show them what precision looks like. The Warhammer's main railgun spoke for the first time. The sound was like reality tearing, a magnetic pulse so powerful it made Zarin's teeth ache even through the observation deck's insulation. The two-tone tungsten carbide projectile accelerated down the kilometer-long barrel at a significant fraction of light speed. On the tactical display, Zarin watched the projectile cross 400,000 kilometers in less than 2 seconds. Watched it punch through a Vorak heavy cruiser's forward weapons array with surgical precision. The enemy ship's guns went silent. Dead. Disabled. But the crew compartments remained intact. Life support functional. The ship crippled, but the crew alive. Target 2 weapons disabled, the tactical officer reported. No casualties detected in their crew sections. Another railgun discharge. Another Vorak ship disarmed with perfect accuracy, then another, and another. This wasn't war the way Zarin understood it. This was something else entirely. A demonstration of such overwhelming technological and tactical superiority that the Vorak must have been realizing they'd made a catastrophic mistake. This is Captain Zarin of the Aquarius Science Fleet, Zarin broadcast on all frequencies, his voice steady despite his racing hearts. I am an independent observer aboard the human vessel Warhammer. I am witnessing this battle. The Vorak Empire launched the first attack. They targeted hospital ships marked with medical neutrality symbols. The humans responded defensively, destroying incoming missiles without targeting Vorak crew sections. The humans have not initiated aggression. I repeat, the humans are defending, not attacking. This is the truth. I witnessed this. Vorak are jamming the transmission, communications reported. Doesn't matter, Commander Kate said from his intelligence station. The message got out. 17 Council worlds received it before the jamming started. The truth is spreading. On the tactical display, the Vorak fleet began to falter. 10 of their ships were disabled, weapons dead, but crews alive. Their formation was breaking apart as captains realized their intelligence had been catastrophically wrong. Humans weren't the unsophisticated brutes they'd expected. They were facing military professionals who could have annihilated them but chose restraint instead. Then something unexpected happened. 3 ships decloaked at the edge of the battle space. Unknown configurations, unknown designs. They broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously. The first ship's transmission showed an insectoid being, compound eyes and clicking mandibles. Humans of Terra, we are the Kryn. 50 years ago, when the plague of falling stars devastated our worlds and the Council declared our space a quarantine zone, your medical ships came anyway. You risked contamination to save 3 million of our people. You asked nothing in return. We stand with you now. The second transmission that showed a crystalline being, silicon-based life that refracted light in strange patterns. We are the Threll. 20 years ago, the Council declared our world uninhabitable due to atmospheric composition and forbade aid to our dying people. Humans came anyway, built shelters that could protect us, brought supplies, established trade, treated us as equals. We stand with you. The third was bipedal but clearly non-human, scaled skin and vertical pupils. We are the Valdari. The Council called us forbidden, because we refused to surrender our sovereignty to their economic control. Humans offered us fair trade instead, respect instead of demands, partnership instead of subordination. We stand with you. The three ships moved into formation with the human defensive fleet. They weren't the largest vessels, not the most powerful, but their presence meant something that firepower couldn't measure. Admiral Thane's voice came through the observation deck speakers, and Zarin heard something like emotion breaking through his professional calm. Kryn Threl Valdari, you honor us with your presence, but this isn't your fight. You don't have to. When someone helps you in your darkest hour, the Kryn interrupted, you don't forget. When someone treats you with dignity, when the galaxy says you're worthless, you remember. We are here because humans showed us what true civilization looks like. The Vorak fleet was in full retreat now, their remaining operational ships turning and accelerating toward the hyperspace transition point. They left behind 13 disabled vessels, their crews intact, but their weapons destroyed. Let them go, Thane ordered. Do not pursue. Our mission was to protect Proxima Prime, not hunt Vorak. Mission accomplished. The battle had lasted 9 minutes. 9 minutes that would reshape the galaxy. The aftermath of battle was quieter than the battle itself. The Warhammer's crew moved with practiced efficiency, securing the disabled Vorak vessels before they could drift into dangerous orbits. Marine boarding teams cut through damaged hulls to reach trapped crew members. Medical shuttles transported injured Vorak personnel to human medical facilities. Zarin watched it all from the observation deck, his mind struggling to process what he'd witnessed. 9 minutes. The entire battle had taken 9 minutes. The Vorak had arrived with overwhelming numerical superiority and absolute confidence in their intelligence. They had left with 13 disabled ships and the knowledge that they had been utterly comprehensively outmatched. And the humans had let them go. Let them retreat. Let them carry back the truth to their commanders who had sent them to commit atrocities. Captain Zarin, Commander Astra approached, her face tired but calm. The Admiral requests your presence on the bridge. There's something you need to see. The bridge was organized chaos, damage control reports, status updates on the disabled Vorak vessels, coordination with the planetary garrison to ensure civilians understood the threat had passed. Captain Mordecai stood at the center of it all, directing traffic with quiet authority. Captain Zarin, he acknowledged, your broadcast reached 17 Council worlds before the jamming started. The Vorak tried to suppress it, but it's spreading anyway, faster than they can contain it. He brought up communications intercepts on the main display. Messages between Council officials, emergency sessions being called, demands for explanations. The carefully constructed narrative was crumbling in real time. More than that, Commander Cade added from his intelligence station. 3 of the Vorak ships we disabled are transmitting to their fleet command, telling the truth about what happened, about how they attacked hospital ships and humans responded with precision instead of rage. Not all of them are willing to maintain the lie. Admiral Thane stood by the forward viewport looking out at Proxima Prime. The planet turned peacefully below, utterly unchanged by the battle that had been fought in its orbit. 50,000 civilians were safe. The hospital ships were intact. Not a single patient had been harmed. Captain Zarin, Thane said without turning around, what did you see today? Zarin moved to stand beside him, looked out at the planet, at the disabled Vorak ships being secured by human marines, at the 3 allied vessels that had come to humanity's defense. I saw warriors who chose restraint when they could have chosen annihilation. I saw defenders who valued enemy lives even while defending against attack. I saw proof that strength and compassion aren't opposites, they're complements. And what will you tell the Council? The truth, exactly what I witnessed, that the Vorak attacked civilians without provocation, that humans defended with precision and honor, that the entire Deathworlder narrative is propaganda designed to justify keeping independent species isolated. Thane turned to face him. They won't believe you, you know that. They'll say we coerced you, brainwashed you, manipulated your perceptions. Some won't believe, Zarin agreed, but some will, and they'll ask questions. They'll demand access to the full sensor data, the unedited recordings. They'll want to investigate, and slowly and perfectly, the truth will spread. You understand what this will cost you personally, your career, your reputation, possibly your freedom. Zarin smiled slightly. It felt strange on his face after everything he'd experienced, but genuine. Admiral, 3 weeks ago, I was dying on a broken ship. You saved me and my crew when you could have ignored us. You showed me a truth that my entire civilization has been hiding from. You trusted me with knowledge that could hurt you. The least I can do is tell the truth regardless of cost. 3 days after the battle, the medical bays of the Warhammer told a story that would have been incomprehensible to the Council. Human doctors worked alongside Aquari medical staff to treat Vorak wounded. Enemy soldiers who had come to murder civilians were receiving the same level of care as human crew members. Dr. Thorne moved between beds with the same gentle efficiency, checking vital signs, adjusting treatments, offering comfort without regard to species or allegiance. This is a violation of engagement protocols. One of the rescued Vorak officers protested weakly as Dr. Lyra checked his injuries. We are enemies. You should leave us to die or take us prisoner. Not this. Dr. Lyra looked at him with eyes that had seen her own daughter nearly die and been saved by strangers. That's not how civilized people behave. You're injured. We heal injuries. It's that simple. But we tried to kill you. We targeted your hospital ships. I know what you tried to do, she said quietly, her voice firm, and you'll answer for those orders to whoever judges you. But while you're on this ship, while you're under our care, you're a patient, not an enemy, a patient. That distinction matters. Deep in another section of the medical bay, a young Vorak pilot sat up in his bed, his arm in a regenerative cast. Kiva approached him cautiously, holding her preserved rose. Does it hurt? She asked in carefully practiced Vorak. The translation systems had helped her learn basic phrases. The pilot stared at her in confusion. You're one of the aliens they said we were protecting. From the Deathworlders. The humans aren't Deathworlders, Kiva said with a child's certainty. They're protectors. They saved me when I was dying. They saved you too. We attacked them. I know, but they saved you anyway. That's what good people do. She placed the preserved rose on his bedside table. Dr. Thorne gave me this, to remind me there's beauty even on warships. You can have it. To remember that even enemies can choose to be kind. The pilot stared at the rose, at the child who had every reason to hate him, at the human medical staff who were treating his wounds with the same care they'd give their own people. I don't understand, he whispered. I didn't either, Kiva admitted, but I'm learning. You can learn too. 5 days after the battle, the Warhammer prepared to depart Proxima Prime. The disabled Vorak vessels had been repaired enough to limp home, their crews returning with stories that would spread regardless of official suppression attempts. The 3 allied species Krinthrel Valderi had shared meals and conversations with the human crews, strengthening bonds that had been forged in crisis. The Aquari crew gathered in the observation lounge one final time before transfer to a diplomatic transport that would take them to Council Station Harmony. You don't have to go, Admiral Thane told them. You could stay, request asylum. Earth would welcome you, all of you. Zarin shook his head. We have to go back, Admiral. We have to testify. If we run, if we hide, it proves their narrative that you coerced us. We have to face the Council and tell them what we witnessed, even knowing they'll try to destroy you for it, especially knowing that. Zarin looked at his crew, at Dr. Lyra and Kiva, at Maris, who had grown so much in 3 weeks, at the other Aquari who had all voted unanimously to return and testify. We're scientists, explorers. Our job is to discover truth and share it regardless of whether that truth is convenient or comfortable. Dr. Thorne approached with data chips for each of them. Complete medical records, biological scans from when you arrived, treatment protocols, proof that we helped, not harmed, and full tactical recordings of the battle. Every sensor feed, every communication, everything unedited and time-stamped. They'll say we fabricated the data, Maris observed. Let them try, Commander Kate said. We've embedded cryptographic signatures that are impossible to forge. Any expert analysis will confirm authenticity. The data is truth-locked. Sergeant Vex knelt beside Kiva one last time. You're a very brave little one. Braver than most adults I know. I'm scared, Kiva admitted. Being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared. That's what you're doing. That's what makes you a hero. She pressed something into the child's hand, a small medallion. This was my grandmother's. She gave it to me before I joined the military. It's supposed to bring courage to those who need it. I want you to have it. Kiva looked at the medallion, a simple circle of metal with the inscription in human script. What does it say? Truth stands when lies fall. My grandmother lived through a war where propaganda nearly destroyed her world. She learned that truth matters more than comfort. I think you understand that now, too. The farewells took hours. Hugs were exchanged despite species differences. Promises to stay in contact. Hopes for a future where such contact wouldn't be forbidden. As Zarin prepared to board the transport, Admiral Thane stopped him one final time. Captain, there's one more thing you should know. When you testify, you won't be alone. We're releasing all of our intelligence on Council military expansion to the public domain. Every species will have access to the data, the secret bases, the invasion plans, the false flag operations, everything. That will burn your intelligence network, expose your agents, decades of work destroyed. Yes, Thane agreed, but the truth is worth more than our secrets. If we keep hiding what we know, we're no better than the Council leadership hiding what they know. Transparency has to start somewhere. It might as well start with us. Zarin clasped the Admiral's hand in the human gesture he'd learned. Thank you for everything, for saving us, for showing us the truth, for trusting us with it. Thank you for being willing to stand for it. Not many people would choose truth over safety. You're doing something important, Captain. Something that will echo through history. The transport departed 3 hours later, carrying the Aquari crew toward Council space and whatever judgment awaited them there. Behind them, the Warhammer turned toward the outer reaches of human space, resuming its patrol, ready to answer the next distress call, ready to defend the next colony, ready to prove again and again that strength without compassion was tyranny, but compassion without strength was helplessness. 6 weeks after the Battle of Proxima Prime, Captain Zarin stood before the Council General Assembly. The chamber was vast beyond measure. 2,000 delegates from 200 species occupied seats arranged in concentric circles around a central speaking platform. The ceiling disappeared into shadows and architectural grandeur designed to make individuals feel small and insignificant. But Zarin had faced death in the void, had watched his crew struggle for air on a dying ship, had witnessed humans fight with honor when they could have fought with rage. The grandeur of the chamber couldn't intimidate him. Not anymore. Honorable delegates, he began, his voice amplified to reach every corner of the massive space. I come before you to report on an incident that has been the subject of much debate, much controversy, and much misinformation. I was the captain of the Luminous Tide when catastrophic damage left us stranded with critical life support failure. I made the decision to contact Earth for rescue in direct violation of Protocol Article 7 regarding forbidden contact with Deathworld species. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The speaker, the Relian elder with translucent skin, called for order with a chime that echoed like a bell. Zarin continued, his voice steady and clear. What I experienced in the weeks that followed has convinced me that Protocol Article 7 is not just wrong, it is a crime against truth itself. The humans saved my crew, all 43 of us, including 5 children. They asked nothing in return. They demanded no concessions. They sought no advantage. They simply helped because we needed help, and they had the capacity to provide it. He activated the holographic projector built into the speaking platform. Images filled the air above the assembly floor. The Luminous Tide's damaged hull, human rescue teams administering aid, medical facilities prepared for Aquari biology. And then they showed me something that I believe every member of this council needs to see, something that challenges the very foundation of our civilization's relationship with species marked as forbidden. More images. Star maps showing Council military bases encircling human space. Intercepts of Vorak military communications. The Battle of Proxima Prime from multiple sensor angles. I witnessed the Vorak Empire attack civilian medical vessels marked with universal neutrality symbols. I witnessed them launch 240 missiles at defenseless hospital ships. I witnessed their commanders broadcasting false claims of human aggression even as they committed war crimes. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouting, accusations, denials. The Vorak delegation stood as one, their leader's voice rising above the chaos. This is propaganda. The data has been manipulated by human intelligence operations. This Aquari captain has clearly been compromised, possibly through drugs or neural manipulation. Then examine the data yourself, Zarin said calmly. Every recording includes cryptographic verification that proves authenticity. Any expert can confirm the data is unaltered. The timestamps are verified against astronomical phenomena that cannot be faked. This is truth, not manipulation. He let the images continue playing, the Vorak missiles being intercepted by point defense, human railguns disabling enemy weapons with surgical precision, Vorak crew members being rescued and treated by human medical staff. I watched humans defend themselves while simultaneously protecting their attackers from lethal harm. I watched them disable 32 warships without killing a single crew member. I watched them treat enemy wounded with the same care they gave their own people. The Vorak delegation leader's face was purple with rage. He's lying. Humans are savage. I'm not finished, Zaren's voice cut through the protests. The Council has told us that Death World species are dangerous, that they solve all problems through violence, that they cannot be trusted to coexist peacefully with civilized species. I am here alive, standing before you as living proof that we have been systematically lied to. He pulled up the evidence of Operation Witness. The classified documents showing his own mission had been sabotaged. The navigation errors deliberately introduced. The plan to use his crew's deaths or exploitation as propaganda. My mission, the mission that nearly killed my entire crew and 5 innocent children, was deliberately designed to manufacture an incident with humans. The Council Intelligence Division sabotaged my ship's sensors knowing we would need rescue, knowing the only option would be Earth. They expected humans to ignore us, attack us, or exploit us. They expected any outcome except genuine humanitarian aid. The chamber had gone silent. Even the protesters had stopped shouting. They were wrong, Zern said quietly, and their intelligence failure reveals something crucial. The Council leadership doesn't mark species as forbidden because they're dangerous to others. They mark them because they're dangerous to the Council's control, because they refuse to surrender their sovereignty, because they prove that advanced civilization doesn't require submission to bureaucratic oversight. He looked around the chamber at 2,000 faces from 200 species. How many other species have been marked as forbidden for political reasons? How many potential friends have we been taught to fear? How many lies have we accepted as truth because questioning them was uncomfortable? The Threll ambassador stood a crystalline being that refracted light in rainbow patterns. The Threll were marked as forbidden when we refused to accept Council economic jurisdiction. We were dying and the Council forbade aid. Humans came anyway, built us shelters, brought supplies, asked nothing in return. Captain Zaren speaks truth. The Kryn ambassador rose next, compound eyes glittering. The Kryn faced plague. The Council quarantined us and left us to die. Humans brought medical aid at great risk to themselves. They saved 3 million of my people. Captain Zaren speaks truth. One by one, delegates from 17 different species stood. Species that had quietly opened diplomatic channels with Earth after Zaren's broadcast from Proxima. Species that had investigated and found their own evidence. Species that had chosen to question instead of accept. This is outrageous. The speaker's chime rang desperately. This assembly is descending into chaos. We must maintain order. Order built on lies is tyranny, Zaren said. His voice wasn't loud, but in the silence it carried to every corner of the vast chamber. I'm not asking you to immediately embrace humans or any other forbidden species. I'm asking you to investigate, to question, to verify the evidence with your own experts, to stop accepting comfortable lies when uncomfortable truths are available. He pulled up one final image, the Warhammer and the luminous tide flying in formation, human and Aquarius ships side by side. I came here today knowing I would be called a traitor, knowing my career is over, knowing many of you will never believe me. But I also came knowing that some of you will investigate, some of you will ask hard questions, some of you will choose truth over comfort. He looked directly at the Vorak delegation. And I came knowing that your own crews are already spreading the truth among your people, that your government's propaganda is failing because your soldiers came home and told their families what really happened. That truth, once released, cannot be contained no matter how powerful the lie. Captain Zaren, the speaker said, his translucent face showing distress. You will be detained pending investigation into these serious allegations. This assembly cannot... I'm aware of the consequences, Zaren interrupted. I accept them. Truth doesn't need my freedom to spread. It only needs to be spoken. I've spoken it. Now it's your choice what you do with it. Security forces began moving toward the speaking platform. But before they reached him, something unexpected happened. The entire Aquari delegation stood. Dr. Lyra's voice rang out. Captain Zaren saved our lives. He has told the truth as we witnessed it. We stand with him. Arrest us all if you must, but you cannot arrest the truth. Then Maris. I am Navigator Maris of the Luminous Tide. I witnessed everything Captain Zaren described. I verify his testimony completely. I too choose truth over comfort. The 17 species that had stood earlier moved toward the speaking platform, creating a protective ring around Zaren. The Threll ambassador's crystalline voice resonated through the chamber. If you arrest him for speaking truth, you prove his point. You prove that this council values control over honesty. The speaker looked helplessly at the growing crowd on the chamber floor. Security forces stopped uncertain, awaiting orders that weren't coming. In the chaos, Zurin saw something that gave him hope. Delegates from dozens of species were accessing the data he'd provided, running their own analyses, checking the cryptographic signatures, verifying timestamps against astronomical records. The truth was spreading, faster than the speaker could call for order, faster than the Varak could deny, faster than the council leadership could suppress. It wouldn't change everything overnight, wouldn't instantly reform 2 centuries of propaganda and fear, but it was a beginning. Sometimes beginnings were enough. 6 months later, the first official diplomatic mission from Earth arrived at Council Station Harmony. Not a warship this time. A proper diplomatic vessel, the CSS Endeavour, named after one of Earth's ancient exploration ships. Clean lines, peaceful design, weapons present but understated, a quiet reminder that peace didn't mean helplessness. Admiral Thane led the delegation. Captain Mordecai was there. Commander Astra, Dr. Thorne. Even Sergeant Vex, whose scarred face had become familiar to billions through Zaren's testimony footage. The council received them with formal courtesy, barely concealing hostility. But they received them. That was what mattered. After 73 years of forbidden contact, humans and council representatives sat across from each other for the first time. The negotiations were tense, difficult. Progress came in millimeters, but it was progress. 17 species had opened diplomatic channels with Earth. 3 more joined in the months that followed. The Vorak government had fallen in a scandal when their own military officers testified about Operation Cleansing Tide. The Council Intelligence Division was under investigation by 12 separate member species. Change was slow, imperfect, frustrating, but it was happening. Zaren stood in the gallery overlooking the negotiation chamber, watching Admiral Thane discuss trade agreements with Council representatives who had been taught to fear him. The Admiral had resigned his military commission to lead the diplomatic mission, a warrior choosing words over weapons because the situation demanded it. "You're not in detention," a voice observed beside him. Zaren turned to find Maris, who had been appointed as a query liaison to the human delegation. The investigation concluded I acted with integrity under impossible circumstances. They couldn't punish me without admitting their own culpability in Operation Witness. And Dr. Lyra, working with Dr. Thorne on a joint medical research project, they're developing treatment protocols that work across multiple species. Kiva helps sometimes. She's decided she wants to be a xenobiologist when she grows up, because of what she saw in the Warhammer, because humans showed her that the universe is bigger and stranger and more wonderful than she'd been taught. That fear makes you small, but curiosity makes you infinite. They watched the negotiations in comfortable silence, watched humans and council species argue and compromise, and slowly, painfully build understanding. "Do you think it will work?" Maris asked. "True peace between humans and the council. I think peace is never permanent. It's something you choose every day, every hour, every moment when violence would be easier." Zaren thought about Admiral Thane in his chapel, remembering why he fought, about Dr. Thorne giving Kiva a rose because beauty mattered, about Sergeant Vex teaching songs about finding home. Humans understand that better than most. They've fought enough wars to know what they cost. That's why they'll fight so hard for peace, because they know the alternative. The doors opened and Admiral Thane emerged, looking tired but satisfied. He saw Zaren and smiled. "Captain, walk with me." They left the political chambers behind, moving to an observation deck that overlooked the station's central axis. Ships from dozens of species moved through the docking lanes. Trade, travel, the ordinary business of a galaxy trying to coexist. The council agreed to form an independent investigation committee, Thane said. They'll review all 23 forbidden species classifications, determine which were based on actual danger and which were political suppression. That's more than I expected. It's less than we hoped for, but more than we feared. Diplomacy. Thane looked out at the stars. You changed the galaxy, Captain Zaren. You stood before 2,000 delegates and told them uncomfortable truths. Not many people have that kind of courage. I just told them what I saw. That's what courage is. Seeing the truth and speaking it when silence would be safer. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching ships come and go, watching the ordinary miracle of different species coexisting. "What will you do now?" Thane asked eventually. "Command again if they'll have me. The Aquari Science Fleet offered me a new ship, a mission to explore the border regions between human and council space, to document the species there, to make sure no one else gets marked as forbidden without a fair chance. An explorer becoming a bridge builder. I learned from the best." Zaren smiled. "What about you? Will you stay in diplomacy?" For now, but I miss the Warhammer, miss the certainty of command. Thane's ancient eyes held distant thoughts. But this is where I'm needed, where I can do the most good. So I'll stay until the foundation is solid enough to support itself. And then I'll go home, to Earth. To the ocean house I've been building for 30 years and never had time to finish. I'll watch sunsets, read books, maybe write my memoirs and bore my grandchildren with stories about the old days. You have grandchildren? 3, never met them. They're on Earth with my daughter while I've been out here keeping the borders safe. Thane's voice held regret. That's the cost of service. The things you miss while you're protecting them. But it's worth it. They get to grow up in a safer galaxy because people like you chose truth over comfort. The observation deck doors opened again. Dr. Lyra entered with Kiva, who had grown noticeably in 6 months. The youngling ran to Zarin with the enthusiasm of healthy children everywhere. Captain, look what Dr. Thorne taught me. She held up a tablet displaying complex molecular diagrams. It's how medicines work at the cellular level. Isn't it beautiful? Zarin looked at the diagrams, genuinely complex pharmacology that would challenge adult scientists. You understand all this. Most of it. Dr. Thorne says I'm a natural, says I ask the right questions. Dr. Lyra approached with the tired smile of a proud parent. She's been accepted into a xenobiology program, human and Aquaria universities cooperating on joint education. She'll be in the first class. That's wonderful, Kiva. Your mother must be very proud. She cries every time someone mentions it, Kiva said with a child's bluntness. Happy crying, though. Admiral Thane knelt down to Kiva's level. Young lady, you represent the future. Humans and Aquaria learning together, building together, making something new that's better than what came before. That's what makes all of this worthwhile. Kiva looked at the Admiral with serious eyes. Are you scared of what's coming, the treaty talks? Every day, Thane admitted, but I'm also hopeful. Because I see young people like you who don't carry the old fears, who see possibilities instead of threats. That gives me hope that maybe we'll get this right. We will, Kiva said with absolute certainty, because the alternative is too sad, and humans taught me that you don't accept sad outcomes when you can work for happy ones. Later that evening, Zarin hosted a small gathering in his quarters, the original Luminous Tide crew, the humans who had saved them. New friends from the 17 species that had chosen dialogue over fear. They shared food from a dozen worlds, told stories, laughed at cultural misunderstandings, and marveled at unexpected similarities. Built friendships that transcended the political tensions outside. Sergeant Vex taught the younglings a new song, a human composition about bridges and journeys, and finding unexpected friends in distant places. Her rough voice carried the melody, while Aquaria children sang the words with perfect pitch and enthusiastic volume. Dr. Thorne and Dr. Lyra debated medical ethics with the passion of people who loved their work. Captain Mordecai discussed ship design with Chief Engineer Tallis, both fascinated by the other's approach to solving common problems. Maris had a long conversation with Commander Astra about the philosophy of defense, about what it meant to be strong enough to protect but wise enough to show restraint, about how the two weren't contradictory but complementary. As the evening grew late and guests began departing, Admiral Thane pulled Zarin aside one final time. I wanted you to have this. He handed over a small box. Open it later, when you're alone. After the last guest had left, Zarin opened the box in the quiet of his quarters. Inside was a medal, human military decoration. The inscription read, "For extraordinary service to humanity and the cause of peace. Awarded to Captain Zarin of the Aquaria Science Fleet, who chose truth when lies would have been safer, who witnessed when silence would have been easier, who stood for principles that transcended species and politics." In recognition that courage comes in many forms, and that sometimes the bravest warriors never carry weapons. Below the medal was a handwritten note in Thane's precise script. Captain Zarin, you reminded us why we fight, why we protect, why we choose to be guardians instead of conquerors. You saw us at our best and at our most desperate, and you told the truth about both. That's the highest honor anyone can give. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your integrity. Thank you for showing the galaxy that truth stands when lies fall. Admiral Marcus Thane. Zarin held the medal for a long time, feeling its weight. Physical weight was negligible. Symbolic weight was enormous. He moved to his window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Warhammer was patrolling human space, ready to answer the next distress call, ready to protect the next colony, ready to prove again and again that strength and compassion weren't opposites. Somewhere out there, other forbidden species were watching what happened between humans and the Council, waiting to see if this fragile beginning would survive, hoping that maybe, just maybe, they too might find acceptance instead of isolation. Somewhere out there, the future was being written one choice at a time, one truth at a time, one bridge at a time. Zarin thought about Captain Vel, about his mentor who had died waiting for help that came too late, about the promise he'd made to never let bureaucracy kill his crew. He'd kept that promise, and in keeping it had changed the galaxy. The question now was whether the galaxy would change itself in response. Time would tell. But for the first time in 73 years, humans and the Council were talking instead of fearing, building instead of isolating, questioning instead of accepting. That was enough. For now, it was enough. Zarin placed the medal carefully in a place of honor on his desk. Tomorrow he would meet with the Aquarius Science Fleet about his new command. Tomorrow he would begin planning missions that would map understanding instead of just mapping stars. Tomorrow, the work would continue. But tonight he stood at his window and looked at the stars and felt something he hadn't felt since before the accident. Hope. Pure, uncomplicated, genuine hope. The universe was vast and cold and indifferent to the struggles of any single species. But people weren't indifferent. People could choose, could build bridges, could stand for truth even when lies were easier. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes those choices mattered. The galaxy was changing, slowly, imperfectly, one mind at a time, one truth at a time, one bridge at a time. And Captain Zarin, who had sent a desperate message into the dark and received salvation from monsters who turned out to be guardians, would spend the rest of his life making sure that change continued. That truth continued to spread, that the next person who needed help would know they could call for it without fear, that the next species marked as forbidden would have advocates willing to question the classification, that the galaxy vast and ancient and slow to change would nonetheless change when people were brave enough to push it in the right direction. He looked at the stars and smiled. The Deathworlders had taught him well. Truth stands when lies fall, and he would stand for truth until his last breath.